All right, welcome. Call the meeting to order. This is the special city council meeting for Friday, September 30th, 2022. Ms. Hilbrick, will you please call roll?
Testing. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2.
Hello?
Yes, you're on.
Now you're on.
Councilman De La Garza?
I am present.
Councilwoman Solis?
Here.
Councilman Crocker?
Here.
Councilwoman Scott?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Young?
Here.
Councilman Lofgren?
Here.
And Mayor Bachmann.
Here. And if everybody will please rise for Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor
the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. All right. Are there any announcements or reminders, Mr. Garza?
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. Just briefly, I should have probably started doing this a while ago, but considering that I got 2 of these just in the last couple of days, I do want to briefly acknowledge a few work anniversaries from our executive team. So today is actually 3 years for Ashley Shriver, our communications director, which is crazy to think that it's been 3 years, right? But she's obviously done a great job for us, so thank you, Ashley. Yesterday was 8 years for Julie, which also seems, yeah, she's waving in the back, hiding in the back. And earlier this month, actually, last week, was Danielle, 14 years.
Wow.
And so it's probably easy. It may or may not be easy to forget that Danielle started 14 years ago with the Parks Department.
I remember.
But anyway, thank you all so much for your dedication to the city.
Is that all you had?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have a reminder. This meeting will end at 4 o'clock. All right. So I'll split the time up equally with everybody.
Yeah.
If someone goes short, great. Someone else can have a little extra time.
If it ends early, do we get that time added to like next time?
No.
Like the debt, like the tax rate.
You can, take that pay from the checks we get.
Yeah.
Items from council. Does anybody have anything? Nope. All right. We'll close items from council. Go to citizens communication. We have 2. We have Miss Nancy Gardner.
And for those citizens that are here to speak, you're welcome to come up to the podium. And if you didn't hear Jeff, he called Nancy.
Way back there.
Thank you for your time. I'm really here to talk a little bit about an item that's not on the agenda today that I could see, but it was about De Leon Plaza and with the progress that's being made downtown. I wanted to take this opportunity to say a couple of things. I'm really here in 3 capacities. First, as a citizen, to say thank you. If this project downtown had started 20, 30, 40 years ago, think where we'd be now. But thank you for pursuing this. I think it's very worthwhile and critical to the success of Victoria. As a real estate person, I wanted to comment a little bit, looking through the downtown plan, master plan. It was a little difficult, and it's probably there, but I missed the order of some of the things to come. And so as a real estate person and someone who manages down there, I wanted to maybe suggest that probably one of the first things that should be done is probably the last thing that was going to be planned, and that's parking. That has been a long-term problem for everyone that we've ever shown property to downtown, everyone that we've ever marketed to downtown. It's been a problem since the day I moved here 40 years ago, and it is a problem today. And so what I envision might happen is that the parking, the street in front of 1 O'Connor might be one of the first things, because it's the flashiest, or one of the flashiest pieces. But if that parking is removed, then it just complicates the problem. And it really is, I can't tell you the number of times I've heard from prospects why they're not going to locate downtown. So I just want to suggest that doing the parking garage in the beginning, which is not flashy, but it really would be a good investment. I can't stress that enough. I think it would solve a lot of problems. The last reason I'm here is because I now represent the landlord or the owner of 1 O'Connor. And when I look at the master plan, I absolutely love the way it looks. I hope it turns out to be as sparkling as it does. And that building is sort of a centerpiece of it. And to date, so at an opportunity when it's appropriate and with the right people, I would appreciate a conversation about, because that front part of that building seems to be a big part of the process. And so I'd like to talk about that long term, how that relationship is going to work and all those things. But the parking garage was really the main thing that I wanted to say today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. Oh gosh, we really have to call him? Jeff Lyon.
I'm glad I went first.
Yeah. We do have a 3-minute time limit, Mr. Lyon.
I can move this to Monday as well. I'm Jeff Lyon. I'm a resident of Victoria. I live at 107 Harper's Ferry Crossing. Mayor, council members, I appreciate this opportunity to address this body, and I appreciate all the good work that you do to help Victoria. However, I come before you today to oppose the expansion of De Leon Plaza and oppose the permanent closing of Forest Street between Main and Bridge Streets, and further oppose the permanent elimination of approximately 42 parking spots in that area. As you know, parking is a much sought-after commodity in downtown Victoria. In my view, eliminating these parking spaces could create a great inconvenience for any business located anywhere in a 2 to 3 block radius of the plaza itself. And this move would adversely affect government offices, i.e. in the courthouse, court proceedings, banking institutions, entertainment, legal offices, health therapeutic establishments, retail, dining, and numerous other businesses. I know of numerous businesses, establishments, owners, and tenants that were not necessarily told about the intentions of the city when possibly they probably should have. Also, I feel like expanding De Leon Plaza may not assist, it could and it could not assist in attracting new business. And it may not attract any more traffic to downtown. I feel we might be putting the cart before the horse in the expansion while downtown Victoria struggles in recruiting and retaining retail and restaurants. I think we could focus on bringing in quality retail, quality service-oriented business, and mid to upscale restaurants before we start altering the traffic patterns of the original town site of Victoria. Using Forest Streets on a temporary basis in events is the correct way to continue, such as for the event tomorrow downtown. Forest Street between Main and Bridge is probably used 95 to 98% of flowing traffic. The other 2 to 5% is used for events. So logically, the money that's being proposed for this might be better used elsewhere in downtown. Perhaps the city and possibly the county should first consider building adequate parking facilities before making this transition. I'm just asking you to withhold voting on this matter and further discuss some options that might be more conducive for downtown Victoria as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. All right, with that, we'll conclude citizens' communication and we'll go into the work session. We are going to have a little bit of change up in the order and put number 4, the library strategic plan, ahead of number 3's capital improvement plan. But first, we'll start with Mr. Gilbert Rania, and he's going to give us a debt capacity update.
Is this on? Can y'all hear me? Hello? Oh,
There you go.
Keep talking.
a little higher. You can, but they can't. I'm not holding this thing. Okay, cool. Excellent. Mayor, it should take about, 10, 15 minutes. No questions, please. Great. I'm gonna, bottom line, topic of the discussion, what's my credit card limit, okay? First of all, two sections, COs and the red bonds. Let's go to COs and GO bonds. Give you an update quickly on here. Takeaway items, annual debt service declining. One key note in 23, proposed sell some bonds. That increased about 193,000. Also, we had some redemption bond. Remember that. I'm sorry, I crossed the line. $500,000. Okay, keep in mind that's why you had that little spike at 10.1. Overall, your principal balance still in the normal course, outstanding, great capacity in the future. I want to take a moment. A lot of this stuff you probably know, but I just want to make sure everybody remembers it, especially the public. Your debt capacity, basically what I call a debt management plan, are influenced by your tax rate, net tax appraised value, new debt, interest rates, and if we redeem some bonds early. Make sure for the public, redeeming means we're paying off bonds early. With that said, you have the economic influence that affects these items. As a result of that, we're going to have to adapt and adjust our program as we go, is make sure you're aware of that. And we did that. Now, for example, in December, I was back over here giving you a presentation. I showed you from 23 to 33, assuming some net tax appraised value percentage. We had a tax rate back then of 23.76. We decided to do $500,000 redemption, and we ended up with a debt capacity of about $134 million. Today, a year later, 1 year less, I adjusted net tax appraised values, because as you recall, the past 2 years, 1 year was 8, this past year was 11. Next year, I'm seeing around 4. I'm very comfortable with that because we got that phase 2 of Capita coming on board, so that's going to be easy to capture. We currently have a 21 cents tax rate. We are going to redeem some bonds this coming year. And overall, right now, we got $132 million, but keep in mind, if you have the 2.4 we plan to sell this coming winter or early spring, you're still back 134. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of influence that moves it back. But let me give you a side of the other coin. If your net tax appraised values drop, you have some economic factors out there like recession and everything else, that might throw a little kink down the road. If it's temporary, that's good, but I'm just making sure there's another side of the coin here we gotta monitor as we go through this process. And it's not bad. It means we might have to adjust our plans. Maybe take a little longer. That's all it is, okay? But overall, we're in good shape. I'm just gonna focus on the graph. Takeaway here, here's that $2.4 million we plan to sell. And that's going to be around February. In 24, we're proposing right now about $36 million debt capacity. Right now, the CIP for 34 has about $38 million proposed. So you have a delta of about $8 million just in case we need to adjust and adapt within that time frame when we do the projects. My gut feeling, if things work out, I hate to say this, but I'll tell you, is that during a recession, kind of that's a great time when things go bad in a way, but it's cheaper to do things. So anyway, take that, whatever it's worth. If we don't use that delta $8 million, we always can do some redemption and move that outward whenever we need it, paying it off early, okay? If we do that, of course, I would suggest it be in 25, 26. But overall, we got $132 million here. Now, in this $38 million, there's about, I believe, $20 million right now proposed. It might change, but it's proposed for the public safety building. But keep in mind, the sale of the bonds will be around 30,000 plus, maybe. The other 10, recall, will be sold at the same time with these, But right now, we had some discussion with sales tax, maybe that debt service be funded through debt service sales tax for 10 years on an annual basis, okay? Remember, I'll make sure everybody remember that. So when you come and we sell these bonds, Gil, we thought we were gonna sell, no, there's other 10, but those 10 will not affect your debt capacity, i.e. has nothing to do with your tax rate. Make sense? Okay. Dwayne, you had a question or you just doing this? Okay. Good. Oh, let's see, that covers that. Move on.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This assumption has maybe
me?
you said it and I just spaced out, but the tax rate stays at 21.27 cents in that example. But is that realistic?
Well, as you recall, every time I do these, I made an assumption that this tax rate will stay. The offtake that you're not seeing here, cross your fingers that your appraised values will come in slightly higher, and I did that on purpose to offset that tax rate, because I know for a fact, and that's what I meant, that we're going to have to look at this on an annual basis. We've been lucky the past 2 years. We had an 8% increase in 22, 11% increase for the 23. We have the flexibility to bring it down. Now, let's say we don't hit that 4% mark increase. It's time to talk. Because this assumes a 21. Do we go ahead and bring it down, which might adjust your debt capacity? And again, if we don't need the $8 million, you can have that flexibility. But maybe say you do need it, then that's time to talk. Do you look at your CIP, reshuffle it, or what? From a dollar perspective, something's going to trigger that conversation. Okay? Good point. Let's go to the revenue bonds. Pretty straightforward here. Again, we have a decline in annual debt service. Our principal, again, dropping like a hot potato. Again, I want to remember council, that in 23, we're going to have a $12 million revenue bond. That's for the utility improvements for various projects in residential areas. Other than that, that's all I have to say on this slide. Any questions? All right, just a refresher. We have utility rates. Utility rates create a cash flow situation. Cash flow for your operations of utility operations, and also, as you recall, it creates around $9 million plus revenue for our debt service. Back in 19, we have not dropped that. Why? We're taking advantage of that cash flow and aggressively tackling our CIP plans without issuing debt. Okay, remember that? With that case, you got that 9.2. Well, right now, we're going to have a debt capacity. We're going to have the debt service no matter what. Legally, we have to pay the debt, and also you're going to have some leftovers for a decision. Okay, we're going to use cash and pay off. Use cash, or are we going to sell some bonds to do some big projects? So there's a lot of good flexibility there. But this slide is just showing you, without issuing debt, I didn't touch it. What happened? Oh, James, may I proceed? Thank you. Without issuing debt, for the next 5 years, we're going to have about $4 million on an annual basis. And then it's going to jump up to 5.7 and of course to 6. Pretty darn good cash flow. But I want to remind council, in 24, we plan to do a stormwater drainage rate study. Remember that? So there's a possibility that it might strip some of this cash flow to service that operation. Just want to give you a heads up. If council decides to do that. If not, it stays there, okay? Any questions on that? We plan to go for the RFQ in 23 and then select it, and then for 24, we move forward. Debt capacity, we got about $84 million. Just to remind y'all, we're going to do about $12 million now, and in the previous year, we did 5.9. So we have issued about $18 million, including this one. So in 23, here's that 12. For 24, you're going to have about $53 million. And again, I don't see us using that. I could be totally wrong. But again, if it's not needed, it's pushed out further as we need it. and hopefully we can do things in cash. Any questions? All right. Now, I want this in the book. 10 minutes? 12?
Minutes.
Who's next?
That's with a question.
I'm
Yeah,
just kidding.
sort of.
Hey, any more questions? Love it. Thank you.
Was that
Yeah,
applause for you?
yeah.
That's
So,
for me.
obviously, the big takeaway is the debt capacity, right? And we intentionally wanted this item to go first because we wanted to intentionally start painting the picture on just the debt capacity and the funding availability that could potentially, be there over the course of the next several years. This workshop is obviously the setting where we talk about CIP projects. And so typically in December, we talk about projects. In March, we talk about projects. And so we wanted to start getting this information in front of you so that as we start talking about certain adjustments to projects, maybe budgets changing, et cetera, you have some of the more fuller context before we have those conversations. And to that end, we know that part of that conversation is also grants. And so we're also very intentionally wanting Katie to provide an update to you on where we are with grants, as well as some grant funding opportunities, because there might be some projects that we may be either already in the CIP or that conceptually we've thought about including in the CIP that could potentially be taken care of through grant funds, which obviously only alleviates more dollars for our own conversations about our projects. So if there are no other questions for Gilbert, we'll turn it over to Katie to spearhead that conversation.
If I talk really fast, maybe I can get this done faster than Gilbert. Can everybody hear me? No?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
No, I can use if it's
We
on.
have time, so don't feel like you have to speed through it.
I know, I'm kidding. Gilbert, you want your jacket back?
You're not at your house, Gilbert. Just kidding.
You want to be part of the presentation?
First, hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about starting with current projects, running through completed, upcoming, pending, couple words about some unfunded applications, and then, of course, the allocation that we'll be getting from the COG coming up. Current projects, the CDBG DR projects, the buyout and the floodgates. We're making finally getting to the point where we're continuing with appraisals and making and accepting offers on buyout properties. I have on here one offer's been made, accepted, and a contract executed. I just got another one today that's ready for execution, so that's moving forward. The floodgates, the construction has finally begun. Boy, that's been a long time coming. Yes, ma'am?
On those CDBG, one's signed, one's working, out of how many? Out of 150?
I believe
Out of
we have approximately 11 that are
Okay.
in process being approved.
Okay, that,
The numbers fluctuated up and down. We had a few that withdrew from the program, but I believe we have a full 11 that are still in process. They're all at different stages of process.
no,
and-
that's helpful. I didn't know whether
Okay.
it was 100.
Yeah, oh, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
you have
taken
about 11.
and it's taken a while. You may recall that we actually entered into an agreement with the county because the county had received some funds for that as well, but they didn't have as many folks interested, and we had more than what we had money for. So it took a while to kind of get to where we are now. But
Okay.
for the most part, they're in the works.
Yeah, exactly. And so what'll happen is at whatever point we spend up all the money that we have for ours, the remaining applicants who weren't able to get in on our grant will just be shifted over to the county. We will ultimately own that property if it's inside the city limits, but that's what'll happen with that. So we'll be able to cover all of them, I believe, who have applied and are approved.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the floodgates, our Department of Justice, we have a couple of still current projects with them, our COPS hiring program that pays for 5 new hire police officers. That funding's coming to an end this coming fiscal year 23. The body worn camera program, the policy's been reviewed and updated. We purchased about half the cameras, and the next fiscal year we'll purchase the other half. I believe the total on that is gonna be 19 cameras. Yeah, And then we got money from the Johnson Foundation to improve our fire training academy, which is great because we've been trying to get some funding from them for quite a long time. The funds that we applied for and what we actually received was a little bit less, so they're kind of moving around what's going to be purchased, but I believe it's going to be training apparatus and some upgrades out there at the facility. Also, the Texas Parks and Wildlife Duck Pond, as you all know, because you were there, we've begun construction on that as well. That's very exciting. Our current projects, we have an open project with Operation Lone Star. We asked for funding for some equipment that we've received. It's been installed, it's in use, and it's been helping our police officers fight border crime. And then I also wanted to mention, we have a lot of other funding that we go for every year that helps us with things that we've been doing for years, like from the Gulf Bend, our mental health police officers. We get other funding from CDBG that helps with development services projects. TxDOT funds our selective traffic enforcement program, and it gives money to our metropolitan planning organization. DPS funds the Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Authority efforts. The GCRPC funds equipment and supplies for fire department and 911. The Office of the Governor and Club 100 provide funds for public safety. TCLOS provides funds for law enforcement training. TCEQ, air quality, and the Office of Justice Programs also funds law enforcement equipment. I also wanted to talk some about some completed projects, because these have also been kind of in the works for such a long time, and we finally finished them. The generators at Police Department and Community Center finished up. That's a really beautiful picture of the one at the Community Center here, I think. And then the library window film. As you may recall, we started off, we were going to get shutters on it, and then that didn't work out, and so then we decided it was going to be better to put film. The film was applied to the inside of the windows, and that picture is kind of fun. I'll explain it. What that is that's the seal around the edge of the inside of the windows that holds the film on, and that actually was very fast, and so that is already finished up as well. And then we got funding from Humanities Texas for a portion of the design for outdoor space at the library. So that was sort of part of the whole of the design of outdoor space. This was just the side along Goodwin that this particular grant funded. And so we have now the plan for that space incorporated as well with the facility study and the other outdoor space planning at the library, but that has also been completed.
Which we'll get more into in the next item.
Right. And hopefully you've all seen our lovely green ribbon project that's been completed. That was a $500,000, it was actually over $500,000 project that the city's investment was $200,000. And Daryl's been working on getting the lighting in there now too. And I wanted to say about the upcoming opportunities and what's in development, that these are highlights of some projects in development for opportunities that we know about will be opening soon. But the plan is to get projects grant ready so that when funding comes available, we're ready to move quickly. So for FEMA BRIC coming up, we're planning on getting together an application for the off-channel reservoir project. What that will do is it will connect the reservoirs so that we can quickly and easily transfer water to use during drought. There's some possibilities there for adding on. We could potentially add on, depending on how things go with some other applications, may add some other drought projects in with that potentially. The TxDOT Transportation Alternatives opportunity is going to open in October, I believe. And we're talking about a West High School sidewalk project, which will construct sidewalks along the West High School side from Tropical down to Conti, potentially, to increase safety for high school students walking to and from West High School. TxDOT has changed the classifications for projects, though. We can submit more than one. So we may submit more than one. The other one that's likely is the O'Connor-Stroman project to put sidewalks in around there. And then the boating access grant for Texas Parks and Wildlife will open first quarter next year. We're looking at developing a project to improve boat access, to improve the boat ramp, and then also move the kayak takeout point to the other side of the pump house to improve the safety and increase the access in and out there. And just make it safer and easier, and hopefully that'll increase, the use of it as well.
On the West High School sidewalk project, why wasn't those sidewalks put in when the high school went in? It was in our code that they needed to be there, but I thought it was because of the highway.
You thought, I'm sorry,
It's because of the highway?
Julie, can you hear that? Julie would probably have a better answer to that. I'm not sure we're going to like the answer, but she has an answer.
Right up there with the second entrance.
So if you remember, I just had my 8-year anniversary, so I was not here. But I have heard the story, and it came down to cost. The bond only covered so much, and so there was a sidewalk waiver given because there's open ditches. But there definitely can be sidewalks, if you notice. When Texan built, we did require them to put a sidewalk in.
Yep.
And so the big expense on this sidewalk is actually the pedestrian elements crossing underneath the loop. But we do see high school, I live very close by, we see high schoolers walking down 87 South almost every day.
So the school district didn't put them in because they couldn't afford it, so it's going to fall on the city to afford it?
The city didn't hold them accountable.
Yeah, well, and ideally TxDOT.
15 years ago
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Julie, can you just give us an idea of, is it the north side or the south side of 87 that the sidewalk's going to be? Because I'm kind of confused on the streets.
So it would actually, so it's the west side, the side that the river's on, going from Tropical Drive, heading south towards Conti or Las Palmas. That section is what we're going to try.
So
And
it's on the side where the Texan is,
Okay,
going from like Las Palmas restaurant intersection
right, okay.
all the way to the high school.
That's what
there's
I thought. I just thought it was a long stretch, so.
Yeah, it is a long stretch, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And there's
Then I'm
a
not
signal
confused.
of
I know
truck.
where it's at now.
Yeah, and we very intentionally are trying to pick projects that are pricey and are a little bit more comprehensive, because when we applied for the sidewalk project over at Stroman last year, or 2 years ago, or whenever it was, we noticed that the awards that were approved were much larger in scope. And so we kind of thought, we probably thought too small when we submitted that project. And so we intentionally were trying to pick more expensive, more comprehensive projects, since history tells us those are the ones that are funded through the grant as opposed to the small ones.
TxDOT also really likes projects on their system. If you remember the Houston Highway Navarro sidewalks, even though it wasn't funded through TA set aside, it started as a TA set aside grant.
Right, I remember that.
Really, we learned they like to fund projects that are on their system.
So the West High School went to the Planning Commission?
I'd have to research that. I don't think so. I don't believe so. Because it's an open ditch, the director at the time would have been able to waive the sidewalk. So that would have been John Kaminsky.
So we would have to enclose a ditch?
No, you can put the sidewalk behind the ditch. It's just our code allows the director to give waivers when there is an open ditch at their discretion.
Right. And you could see it throughout town, when an exception was made versus not, even though when there is a ditch. So,
If there's room behind the ditch, we've been making them put the sidewalks in now.
Thank you, Julie.
you might have to walk back. Just kidding.
Really quickly, the pending applications that we have out now. So I talked earlier about our current application, or current projects, which is, we have a current project with Operation Lone Star. We have another application to purchase the vehicles, equipment, and salaries for officers and fuel, with the goal to continue to increase highway patrol within city limits to help fight border-related crime. And then I submitted 2 applications to HMGP COVID through TDEM, and that is a pass-through from FEMA. So this is also, I submitted the ASR well for that funding, which is the same, scope of work is to build an ASR well. And then also for a project to replace T1 radios with high-capacity microwave radios. And what I wanted to explain about that kind of goes into my next slide of unfunded applications, where I've listed FEMA BRIC. They come up a lot. Earlier, or actually I think at the end of last year, I submitted the ASR well to the FEMA BRIC program, and that one was not funded. So then after that, I submitted it to HMGP COVID, and that one is still pending. It could also be, if it's not funded through TDEM through HMGP COVID, I could again submit it to FEMA BRIC with the off-channel reservoir. So there's still possibilities for us to get the ASR well. Some of the reasons why it wasn't funded, though, is because Texas kind of gets last on the list because Texas doesn't have building codes, even though the city of Victoria does. You don't think that's right?
No, the state passes them, and then it requires us to pass them to get them up to the level that the state has adopted.
Okay. That's what I thought. Rick told me that the reason why we were just last on the list because Texas didn't have them.
There's no enforcement of codes outside of city limits,
Okay.
but there are codes in place.
Okay. Well, in addition to that, though, the company that helped us develop the application told me that the ASR well projects that have been funded have had a much more regional impact, and in fact, they've been in California, which we know that their water issues and drought issues are much more severe than ours. But I think possibly if we were to combine it with some other drought resiliency, that we might have a better shot at that through FEMA BRIC if we don't get it through HMGP COVID. I also wanted to say a few words about what I learned about the EDA ARPA that we submitted for the golf course improvement project. The letter that we were sent from the EDA was that they'd simply run out of money. They only had $16 million for 5 states. And I'm sure that they had far more applications than that, but that doesn't mean that we'll give up on trying to get funding for that project. Additionally, the 2 EAA projects, the Downtown Sidewalk Improvement Project and the Citywide Street Lighting Project, I had a meeting, a virtual meeting with Robert Pichet, who works in the Austin Regional Office, to talk about what it was that may have gotten in the way of us getting funded. And what he said was the projects were good, the applications were thorough and well thought out, he liked the applications. There just wasn't a strong enough link between the project and jobs created, jobs retained, or private investment. It wasn't that it wasn't a good project, it just wasn't as strong as, the link wasn't as strong as the ones that they funded.
And really quick, Katie, that Downtown Sidewalk Improvement Project, just as a quick refresher, this would have been the project that would have addressed street, it would have addressed Main Street in terms of redoing the street, would have addressed changing the sidewalks or adding sidewalks to match the downtown sidewalks from where the library is all the way to Rio Grande, taking those utilities underground and sort of addressing some other gaps in the system, simply to have that consistent, brick paver sidewalk look coming into downtown. And that was roughly a $5 million project, which we of course were all super excited about, thinking we would get it. But it was almost impossible to directly tie job creation with that project because we didn't have a private sector partner that was maybe coming in and putting a new office building or a new this or anything for us to kind of show that. And so that made it difficult for us to compete from that standpoint.
Right, and the good news is that, a lot of the work's already been done on this. We don't give up. I mean, I'm still looking for, we have it ready to go. We had a lot of the preliminary engineering was done. So we keep looking for opportunities to get that funded. And then the TxDOT-VA, going back to the Stroman O'Connor Sidewalk project, Jesus had already kind of addressed this. A lot of what they funded were much like, in fact, the total on our project was roughly half of the smallest project that they funded that year. And a lot of what they funded had like a lot of it connected one area to another, and they were in most cases a shared use path, which is for bicycles, and it's just wider. And we were really focused on the safe routes to school, which was just getting sidewalks in for kids to walk on, to not walk in the street. But like I said, we can submit this one again, and I think we will. TxDOT's kind of made some other categories for this next round of funding, so I think it may qualify for that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Maybe on Guy Grant, there be a grant or a sidewalk trail would help.
Yeah, there could be, but we have to design Guy Grant first and decide where the sidewalk's going to go. And so I think once we get to that point, we can certainly
Now, if I
try and
remember
apply for a
right,
grant.
we applied for a grant many years ago. With this, Julie, I think, would know about it.
Mark, I can't hear you.
Julie, did we not apply for a grant, similar grant for Guy Grant years ago?
Yes, we applied for the build grant, which was.
Getting her steps in.
We applied for the build grant, which was a federal grant, and the minimum grant award, or the minimum application, I think was $10 million. I think we applied for $12 million. And the feedback we received when we did not receive that grant was that it was more of a drainage project than a transportation project, and that's why we weren't funded.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you made the comment that we have to design Guy Grant, and of course that's a hot button because of the cost of it. So because I like to say a lot that I'm not an engineer, can that project be actually two projects? Can one of them be a road and one of them be drainage and sidewalks?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly, and it all just depends on what design option, y'all want to go with, right? And so we do have, and Ken's going to hit on it a little bit because we do have funds in our fiscal year 23 budget to do pre-engineering work on this stretch to come up with some options, because you may recall there's some back and forth, and I don't want to say disagreement, but difference of opinion on whether, do you actually enclose the ditch to expand the road, right, to make it wider? Do you leave the ditch and just focus on the road? Do you enclose the ditch but not put there's so many different factors on what that looks like. Do you focus on just adding lanes where intersections are versus doing 3 lanes the whole stretch? There's so many different options on how you can design that stretch. And depending on what you decide would determine whether it makes sense to separate the projects, keep them the same, whether it makes sense to apply for, one just for sidewalks. And so that's why it's difficult to ascertain what to do without first getting some consensus on what are we going to do with it.
It depends on the money. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's all right. So we'll talk about it some more later.
Yeah, that specific project, we hope that by the time we get to hopefully the March workshop, we can have some options to discuss. Great question, though.
Thank you, Julie. I wanted to talk a little bit about it because I know, we're very excited about the $40 million allocation from the COG. And so I want to talk about what we know, which is that the Congress appropriated money for mitigation activities specifically in 2018 after Hurricane Harvey, and then some other disasters as well. This wasn't just limited to Texas. But Texas got $4.3 billion, and that money went to the Texas General Land Office to administer. The money that's being allocated was left over from the first round of competitive grant opportunity for the CDBG MIT. And the decision was to allocate that out to the COGS and then have the COGS decide on a method of distribution for their entities within the COG. So that's how it came to the Golden Crescent Regional Planning Commission, and as you know, they got $80 million. The mitigation activities as defined are meant to increase resilience to disasters, reduce or eliminate long-term risk of loss of life, injury, damage to, and loss of property, suffering, and hardship. And the other big criteria is that half the money has to be spent in a low to moderate income household area, and then half the money can be spent anywhere within the city. But there are some things, that we don't know. We don't know if there might be any changes to the guidelines. We don't know if the project's going to have to follow our FEMA-approved hazard mitigation plan. I did want to mention, though, that we're finishing up, we actually have finished up the revision to the hazard mitigation plan, the update. It should be going to TDIM soon for review and then be passed on to FEMA for approval. And we've added some non-natural disaster hazards to it. Typically, it does focus on, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, but we've added some. Those have not been approved by FEMA at this point, but we have added some. So, potential project types or to, stormwater diversion, drainage improvements. The thing is, they're really very broad. So it could be a lot of different things that we could use the money for. And with that, I'll ask, are there any more questions?
Do you know by when we have to use this money, or can we just have it encumbered, or the 40 million?
The timeframe.
I think she asked by when would we have to spend the money?
We've asked the COG that. I don't think they know. The GLO may not know. They were asking the GLO. We have asked that question, and we're hoping to get that answer soon. I hope we have plenty of time, because it's a lot of money.
Agreed. What we are planning on doing is, for our December workshop, we hope that by then we have some more details. And one of the first things that we want to do, and the mayor has suggested this, and a couple of you have as well, is to simply just look at all of our CIP projects, those that are either formally in the CIP or those that conceptually we know we want to add to the CIP, and see which one of those can be funded through this 40 million. And so we hope that by the time December comes around, we can present that to you. And that, again, that only continues to set the foundation on, does it free up some money? Does it take some projects off the list? And really just help that holistic conversation on the CIP. So that's the plan for that.
And also, if the rumor's true, this money can be used for grant matching. So I've suggested that, instead of a 10%, 90% grant, maybe we go in stronger at 30% on some grants, so we increase our chances of doing it, but using this $40 million and leverage it to get even more, if there's some opportunities out there.
Yeah. And that'll be something that we'll make a note to make sure that we specifically ask them to confirm whether that's accurate or not.
I can tell you that when we've asked about CDBG funds being used as match in the past, the answer has been yes.
Yeah, and I called GLO and asked them. They said that's their understanding right now, but
okay.
Anything
stuff.
else? Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right.
All right, we're on to library strategic plan update. Will you help us out, Mr. Garza?
Absolutely. So, very excited for today's conversation. We've obviously taken advantage of this setting at our council workshops to talk about just all of the master plans we've undertaken: Parks Master Plan, Downtown Master Plan, Drainage Master Plan, et cetera. And so I'm excited that today we get to share with you some of what we've been working on as it relates to the library. Very quickly, though, just as a refresher, this strategic plan hits on needs of the community, hits on some of the physical constraints or physical opportunities of the building itself. This plan isn't going into, content of our collection or anything like that. And so today's conversation isn't about that, but it's more so about just the future of the library in terms of services, in terms of the physical building. And we've got some pretty neat, exciting things to share with you. And to help us do that, I'm going to introduce Maureen Arndt, who's the principal with 720 Design, who's been helping us through this process over the last several months, and been working with our community group, with our library advisory board, and of course staff to finalize what we'll share with you today. So, Maureen?
Thank you, Jesus. Nice to see you, Mayor and Council, and we are excited to share with you what we've been learning from you all, from your community, from the library staff about the future needs of the library facilities. Our agenda today is to share with you what the community said, come back to you with some of the questions that you asked in our leadership interviews, to share with you the information from the facility condition assessment, talk about how we use key benchmarks and standards for library planning, and then talk about the list of potential recommendations, short-term, mid-term, and long-term. And I'd love to invite you all to ask questions as we go through as well. So community input. We had really great community participation throughout the process. We offered 7 in-person sessions that were also offered in a hybrid situation so people could log in virtually. We had 55 people show up in person to the library, to the Meals on Wheels location, to the elementary school, the library friends and board, as well as we interacted with 2 high school classes to get some good perspective from some younger people in the community. We also offered an online survey, both in Spanish and English, and we had 556 participants in that. So overall, we had well over 600 people throughout the community participate in telling us what their needs, their desires, and their expectations are for library services here in Victoria. One of the first questions that we asked the community when they came into the sessions are, what are 3 words that are aspirational that you'd like to say about your library when you come into the space? It wasn't a list to select from, it was words that they came up with. And so when you see words that are bigger on this slide, that means multiple people said that. And so the biggest adjective they'd like to use to describe their library is friendly, that it's safe, that there are quiet spaces, that it's relaxing and inviting. We also asked folks to tell us what are the services that they desire. And this is the order in which the online survey participants indicated were important. Starting with a cafe and vending space. People want to drink coffee or have a snack when they're at the library or visiting the library. Drive-up returns, as well as service windows, so a place to be able to pick up books when you come to the library is further down the list. I'm going to go through some images that we shared in person, and you'll be able to see how the online survey really overlapped with the in-person sessions. So starting with the most important space for the community was a multi-purpose space. And this seems to be true with communities across the nation, that people are looking towards the library as being a community space and a place to gather, a place to have community events, a place for learning. An arts and crafts classroom. This is an example from McKinney, Texas. This was in the top 10 for in-person. It was number 4 from the online survey. So again, a multi-purpose space that has hands-on interactives, a place that has a moppable floor, that you can do arts and crafts activities for all ages. Having quiet study rooms. This was number 3 in the online survey, and a high vote getter because we're going to see a similar space further on for the community in general. We're seeing this as true for libraries, again, across the nation, that these small group study rooms are the most popular space in any library. They're used for so many different things, and you can see this example has a high-tech option. So if you're taking a webinar, you have a Zoom interview, you're interacting with students for a class. Technology for children was very important to the community. Again, that hands-on learning that we see was important. The STEAM and STEM learning was in the top 10 for both in person as well as in the online survey. These are a couple of examples of libraries that have places that you can build a simple machine. You can build a ball wall. There are microscopes on some of these tables. Arts and crafts, all supported by the books surrounding them. A place for homework. So students are looking for somewhere that they can meet a tutor or meet a school group. Outdoor spaces were really important in both the online survey and the in-person interactions. and creating outdoor reading porches. And your existing building really has a great opportunity to be able to do that. The cafe vending was in the top 10 for in-person as well as for the online survey. And again, as we're looking at these spaces, they're all very multi-purpose. This has vending an opportunity for snacks or drinks, but also you can see there are kids on their computers studying. Perhaps there's a book club that meets in some of the lounge chairs. So no single-use spaces throughout the building. A quiet reading room. Your library is awesome and awesomely busy, and so it's very loud because of all of the activity. And so when we saw the word cloud, quiet was very high on the list. It came up as really important on both the online survey and the in-person community as well. And then just creating unique places to sit and read. And in your existing building, you've got some great opportunities for that with all of the windows that you have and incorporating some spaces that allow for people to sit and read together, family reading time. Video and audio recording studio. This is a big trend in libraries right now to be able to do a podcast, to create oral history from your local community. Students use these for school projects, small businesses use them. And at this point, it doesn't take a lot of technology to be able to do it, but it's very useful to the community, and it was a top vote receiver in the in-person. A makerspace, both high-tech and low-tech. This was interesting feedback that we got from the community, that they were looking for somewhere to learn how to do 3D printing, learn about robotics, learn about coding, but also low-tech, painting and clay and knitting. We heard from small businesses that could use a space for workforce development training as well. Collaboration and instruction classrooms. You see that technology is woven throughout a lot of these responses. The library currently has a computer lab. The community supports that, and having one that's really flexible like this was important. This is in the Seguin Public Library. The glass wall actually opens up, so when there's not a class, the community uses it for other events, or they can close it off and have a private classroom. And then finally, again, having that access to technology. We know that almost 28% of your community doesn't have access to the internet at home. And so the library is an important source for that. Library hours. They've talked a lot about having extended hours, whether it's staffed or not. There is some new technology that allows you to use your library card and a code to access part of the library when the library is not open, an hour before the library opens, for example, so that you can access Wi-Fi, you can have access to printers to finish a school project or a work project. We can extend the library's reach by using lockers. So this is an example of a locker system. So similar if you order from Amazon and you pick it up from the 7-Eleven and you get a code, this is the same. You go online, put your book on hold, and the library puts it in a locker with your code so that you can access it at any time. People wanted to learn about cooking in the library, so tying it to cookbooks and learning. This was especially important for the high school students that are getting ready to go off to college. They were talking about, we don't know how we're going to feed ourselves when we get to college. And so learning some really basic cooking skills at the library is another trend, and one that came up as important to the community. Integrating local history. The library is the resource for tying to your local culture. So these are a couple of examples that we shared with the in-person community about having, projecting images from the history of Victoria. And with your 200-year anniversary coming up, this I think is a really big opportunity for displays and screens and collections that relate to that. And community gathering spaces. You'll see how we integrated this in the Humanities grant part of the study. This is the Tulsa Public Library. It has a big green space. These folks are sitting out on blankets watching a movie on the library lawn. Related to that, programming and performance space. So I think one of the things that we learned during the pandemic was that it was important to be able to go outside and have activities where we could spread out, be in the fresh air, and have a safe space to do that. And not just about programs, but about being able to do homework, being able to access the Wi-Fi to log in for Zoom meetings for work at the library. And then a few other of the library online survey items that didn't show up in person, the book return, the service window, and the family restroom. And then just a couple of things about the online survey. Out of 553 responses, by far, the biggest use of the library today is to check out books. So books are definitely still the brand. It's still very important. The next 4 or 5 are all about attending programs, learning something, advancing a skill, learning more about something that you're interested in, like a hobby.
And I meant to mention this earlier, but to give you some perspective, we had nearly 600 responses to this process. When we went through the Parks Master Plan process, we had roughly 350 responses to that survey. And when we went through the Downtown Master Plan survey process, we had over 700. And so from our standpoint, this was a really good response from our community, comparatively speaking, to the other master plans that we went through a year and a half ago.
One of the questions that was asked in the leadership interviews was about why people don't use the library. And these were sorted from the online survey of reasons why. The biggest being that they get their information in other places, they don't have a library card, they're lacking in time. Those are the responses that we hear all across the country when we ask this question, so it's nothing really surprising. But all about kind of the PR of the library and advertising some of the other things that are available when people visit the library. Do you have any questions about the community input? Oh. So when we had our leadership interviews and sat down with all of you, we heard the role of the library is twofold. One, it's very traditional. It's about the books, which we also heard from the community, but also that it's a community hub and a place for networking, which supports the programming and the interaction and the educational part of the responses. We heard from you that it was important for the library to be a place where information is disseminated, that it instills a habit of reading for kids, that you're promoting literacy for everyone, that it's a source of connectivity, so back to that networking idea of the library and creating those connections, and that it was important to look at the library as not duplicating private businesses as it moved forward. Some of you asked, why are we not all digital or all computers? And the reason is kind of twofold. And the first, we've talked about already that there's a big portion of your community that doesn't have internet at home to be able to access digital materials. And the other is a publishing issue, that digital books cost about 4 times as much as physical books. And the way digital materials are licensed, patrons of the library can check them out 6 times before it has to be purchased again, unlike a physical book that has unlimited checkouts. And so there's a cost implication. That cost implication, of course, is balanced by how much square footage you have to build to house physical books. And so we're kind of constantly looking at all of those factors to determine what percentage of the collection really makes sense to be digital versus physical. And the other question that was asked was about the difference between public, school, and academic libraries. When we're talking about public libraries for a community, we're talking about generally a popular collection, a collection that reflects things like local history, So some research, but mostly it's popular collection, and it's open to everyone in the community for extended hours. When we're talking about a school library, it's a library that is dedicated to that age group, and it's open the hours that the school is open. And so before school, after school, weekends, it's not accessible, and it's generally not accessible to the general public. Academic libraries, and the ones that are located here in Victoria, serve their students first, their tuition-paying students, and then they're open to the community at large as well. However, when we did the research on things like study rooms in the colleges, they're full all the time with college students. Not surprising, that's something that we hear all the time. And so the public isn't really able to get those reservations for the study rooms. And so that overlap is challenging based on the demand within the college students. So in summary, what we heard from you was that you wanted to be informed. And so that's part of why we're here today, to share with you our findings, to disseminate the information that we found from the community. And then that when you think about a reimagined library, you're thinking about the library in its current location as a potential anchor for all of the exciting things that are happening in the downtown. And you want it to be defendable in terms of the size of the building. And that's what we're going to get into with the standards and the benchmarking. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Jesus?
No, I'm not sure if you hit on it. If you did, I missed it. That we did have over 65% of the survey respondents agree with the premise that having a central library location is their preferred option versus having library branches. And so that stood out to me because it was consistent. There was some agreement with that amongst you. There was some agreement clearly from the residents as well. And so what we're going to delve into next focuses on doing just that, staying where we are now and simply looking at expansion.
Thank you. That is a really important part of this, and I did skip over it. Both in person, so when we talked about it and explained it, and online, so when they were responding to just a statement of fact, do you prefer one large full-service library or multiple branches in your neighborhoods? Yes, well over 60% preferred one central location, full service. So at the very beginning, back in March, when we started this process, we did have a facility condition assessment group come through, and they looked truly at maintenance issues. And so this is the list of issues that came up through facility condition assessment, and it has to do with repairs and updates. We did have them add some of the ADA concerns, elevators, ramps, door hardware, some of those issues. And what their cost estimate for that, if you were to address those issues today, would be $2.6 million. So, of course, we've got escalation for every year that those are delayed, and that's at about 8.3%. This does not include any space planning, reconfiguration, additions. This is strictly the maintenance and code issues that were identified in the condition assessment. One of the things that we also look at when we're looking at the facility is the drive times. And so this has to do with having a single location as well. If you see the red circle, there's a tiny little red dot in the middle. That's the library location. The red circle is a 1.5 mile radius. The kind of peachy orange color is a 15-minute drive. The pink is a 20-minute drive. And the blue is a 30-minute drive. So when we plan libraries, generally we're looking at that 3-mile diameter as what people are willing to drive, but we're also looking at drive times. And generally it's 20 minutes per state standards. And so you can see that the entire city is covered by that 20-minute drive, and even the county is, where there's population, covered in the 30-minute drive. So from that perspective, from a library planning perspective, one location does make sense. We also looked at where the cardholders currently live. There's about 7,600 library cardholders that live in the CDBG area. That's about 35% of the total cardholders. Then when we start to look at further breakdowns, about a third of the cardholders live in the county, a third live in the CBDG, and a third live in the city. About 41% of your population currently has a library card. Are there any questions about those items?
The CDBG, that's not in the city?
Yes.
It is.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess those numbers were throwing me, whether you were accounting for them twice or. Okay.
They are. I pulled them out in two ways, city and then strictly CDBG.
Okay.
And we thought it was important. I think one or two of you might have brought that up in your conversation with Maureen about just looking at the population that the library serves and the socioeconomic status of that. And the only way that we could do that was through census tract, because we obviously, when people get a library card, we don't ask them for income levels, or anything like that. So the best we could do was base it off of an address and pick the census tract, since we already use those census tracts to identify low median household income.
So say that again. You said a third of them was what? Was in the city?
So a third is in the county and 2/3 are inside city limits.
Okay.
And it just so happens that coincidentally, roughly
third,
1/3
a
also
third.
equates to areas that are CDBG.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the survey, did y'all ask them for addresses so that on the survey you know what areas were responding?
We did not ask for addresses, no.
This data that you're looking at is based off of library card holder information, not survey responses.
Okay.
But that is a good question though, and the survey did not ask for
Yeah, because you would
location.
want to make sure that the survey matches the card holders, in which
Right.
maybe most of them would be card holders. So not even the question of, are you a card holder, was it asked?
We did ask that question, and about 12% were not card holders.
So that's a good survey then, because you didn't have less than, I mean, I would say, because if you had a card holder, then you would
Right.
be using the library, and your response would be to what
Right.
you really want.
And that's a good question, which obviously that implies then that 88% of the survey respondents were library card holders,
Right.
so which is good.
I noticed on some of the negative responses, there were folks that were not card holders. And I mean, some of those responses really looked like people that were not familiar with the library at all. To say that there's not adequate parking was, that just kind of indicates that they're not there. So, unless I've missed something, but there's always been parking every time I've been there at busy times.
Right.
With the overflow. Anyway, and that, I'm just picking that as an example, but, so yeah, you could tell that you got a good cross-section of answers, but some of them were not as informed as others.
Right. And we want to involve as many people as possible that aren't currently library holders to get the perspective of, well, first, maybe share with them a little bit about what they haven't thought about the library being able to offer, and what could the library offer to bring more people in, for sure.
You said 41% were card holders?
41% of your total community.
Community.
Is that common or normal, or how does that stack to other communities?
I think it's in kind of that median range. One of the things that we see, so we've got Seguin up on the wall, I'll use them as an example. When a new building opens or a renovated building opens, Seguin, as an example, had their card holders triple, their circulation tripled, their technology use went up by 7 times. And so there's also something to be said about the facility condition assessment and the availability of things and how that affects the library use.
The 28% that have no internet, were those found mostly in the CDBG areas, or was there other areas in the town that included in that 28%?
I got that information from the 2020 census, and it does not break it down.
Yeah. We do have some of that information through the broadband initiative that Derek is spearheading. I don't know it off the top of my head, but we can, Derek's not here, but we can circulate it. I can ask him to provide that and we can share that with you.
Because I thought there was another area, because to me, when I looked at that survey or that map, it seemed like it would all be in Southside, but it wasn't. There were some other areas.
Yeah, there are some pockets throughout town.
Right. Okay.
I remember, I'm visualizing the map in my head right now, and I would guess that 75 to 80% was definitely in the southeast quadrant of our community, but there were pockets spread out throughout our community that also had that limited access.
Right, I thought so. Okay.
Okay, I want to move into a lot of numbers for a minute. We've gone through kind of what people want, what their expectations are, what the trends are for library services. We also have standards that we can look back on, both state and national. And we generally start that by looking at the square footage per capita, because population affects the collection size, the technology quantities, and square footage. And so starting by looking at square footage, you have 33,000 square feet. That was built in 1975. And your square footage per capita right now is 0.49 square feet per capita. At the time that it was built, it was 0.73 square feet per capita. So they were very forward-thinking in 1975. And in addition to that, and I'll get into this a little bit further on, your existing building was designed with a structure that can go up, which is really unusual because that's an expensive thing to do, not knowing when that is going to happen. But this chart is important because it looks at how low the square footage per capita gets if you do nothing with your existing building. So looking out to 2040, if we just take into account the city population, it's 0.45 square feet per capita. Your service population per the state is the county, and so that brings us to 0.32 square feet per capita. So we again looked at this two ways. We took a group of peer libraries and looked at the average square footage per capita for those 5 peer libraries, and that was 0.57 square feet. When we look at the national standards for library services, they have 3 levels: standard, enhanced, and exemplary, and they go from 0.6 square feet to 0.8 to 1 square foot per capita. And so you can see, whether we're looking at the city or the county, there's a pretty broad range of square footage that, per the standards, is required. And so generally what we try to do is look at this as kind of a rule of thumb. Are we falling somewhere in the range for the community? And that's where some of the community expectations and the trends come in to tell us where we fall on that continuum.
And before we move on, let's talk about 1975.
Yeah.
So the library was built in 1975, and you've heard me say before that in the 70s and 80s, the city was very ahead of their times with a lot of things, whether it was economic development, right? I mean, creating VDC in 1982, right? Housing Finance Corporation. There were so many things that the city was doing that were, I don't want to use the P word, but, we're, we're very ahead of their times, right? And so when we looked at it, we thought, geez, well, we wonder how the library would have fallen in these categories based off of the population at the time. And did you jot that down? Because I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, 0.73 square feet. So just a smidge short of the enhanced level.
Yeah, and I think in 1975 we had 50, what was the population?
49?
Yeah, it was close to 50,000 people.
Yeah.
And we just thought of that idea when we were having lunch. But I thought of it because I thought, it just shows that, if we were at that standard back then, the library has an increase in square footage since then, and obviously we have more people. And so if we were at that, enhanced or close to the enhanced, level of service, even just to be at enhanced, which is where we were back then, you get a sense of where we would need to be, right? And some of that will start to make a little bit more sense right now as she goes through the other slides. But just from a historical standpoint, keep in mind that when the library was built, we were more or less at the enhanced category of what is recommended as we talk about where we think we might be able to get to in the near future.
So in 1974, the library was in the nave.
Right.
So that number looks really good right now compared to what the nave looked like in 74.
That's right. Yeah. And to Maureen's point, when it made the switch to the new building, it probably got an influx of new cardholder members and everything else. That's right.
Everybody wanted to see what's inside of that big modern building. And in 1975, we didn't have any computers in the library, right? And so many things have changed about how libraries are used since 1975.
But we've ridden that wave because when they did get them, they were great big, and now they're back to being small.
Right.
And so we've ridden that wave.
In 1975, half the building would have been the processor.
Yeah, we're waiting on purpose, right? Because the new computers would get this big.
That's right.
And those punch card things, I think, would have been. So the square footage per capita is a good place to start, but then we need to dig a little bit deeper about what are the priorities for the community. And so the state of Texas actually has a collection size standard, and all of these numbers are all us looking at what that collection can look like. There is a standard which we ignored because we heard from the community and we heard from you all that collection is important. So we're looking just at enhanced and exemplary level. And there is a per capita amount for the collections. Now, we also look at it in terms of what's physical and what's digital. And so the first two kind of benchmarks that we looked at have the breakdown 30% digital, 70% physical, which is about what we're seeing with libraries across the country. As we get down to 2035 and 2040, we're assuming that more people will have access to the internet, and there'll be better access through the publishers for those materials. So we go to 60-40. And so you can see in 2040, you need about 15,000 square feet for the exemplary level of collection, which is essentially half of your building right now. And then we can look at places to sit, because that's the other big thing that we heard. People want to come into the building, they want a place to sit, they want a quiet space, and we looked at 5 seats per capita. And this is a best practices number, it's not a standards number, but it's another 10,000 square feet just for seating. And then we look at technology, and this is based on the Texas standards, and they have 2 levels, and this is actually the lower level for Texas because we are seeing more people with their own devices. So we're looking at 49 library-provided public computers, so about 2,000 square feet for those. This is the summary. So this takes into account the collection, the seating, the technology, and then it takes into account the things that we heard from the community that were very important to them to be offered in the library. It allows space for staff and for support, allows space for multi-purpose rooms and study rooms, and we come up to about 66,000 square feet, which is double what you have now, but still falls in that lower to mid range of that full continuum of square footage we said we needed for square footage per capita. And so this number starts to make some sense. I told you a lot of data in the last 10 minutes. Questions?
But in all that, and it's very small, I can't tell. I mean, you're doubling the library, but are you doubling the library, or are you adding all these other things, the arts and crafts room and the sewing room and the knitting room and the sit room and the quiet room and the other quiet room and the computer room that's a quiet room and the lecture hall that's a quiet room? I mean, I don't see a library, I see a whole floor of other stuff.
So the library collection, the physical collection is about 90,000. That increases the collection by about a third. And so the library spaces are definitely still there. We're not ignoring that. But it's not broken down the way some of the other line items are, so we're not saying
Okay, so
half
it's
of
in
that
there.
is children's, half is adults, it's all in one lump sum. And so that's why it looks smaller, but
And which number is that?
it is
Oh, their physical collection.
physical collection.
Okay,
Yeah, a little over 11,000 square feet.
thank you.
I have a request.
You can see it better over here.
I can't see the screens, either one of them. Can you send us a PowerPoint of that, a copy of that PowerPoint?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because I'm having trouble. I can't see.
Can't see either.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You've got the numbers on that side. We've got the fuzzy words.
Yeah, so I haven't been able to, I've written some of the information that she's called out, but I can't see anything on the screens. So I'd
Yeah, we
appreciate it.
definitely
Thank you.
were planning on sending you the presentation. I mean, obviously, it's a lot of information to digest. And she's not done yet.
Oh,
But there's definitely a lot of information to digest, but we wanted to, similar to the Downtown Master Plan and Parks Master Plan, right? Kind of just get it all out there for y'all to digest, for sure.
okay. Thank you.
So based on all of that information that we just shared with you, we're coming back to you with some recommendations and some options.
Yeah, to think about. I'm not going to make decisions today, but just to think about.
Yes.
Okay.
So first we looked at short-term options. What are the easy things that we can do right away? One of them is the Humanities grant and the exterior spaces that we talked about. I've got a couple of slides next on that. I'll show you that in detail. There are some furniture things that you can do in your existing building. So you see the little pod station on the bottom. A lot of people wanted a quieter space. That's a way to get a little bit of quieter space without building walls or doing construction by just buying a piece of furniture. There are some technology updates. So starting to get ready for things like RFID, so the library staff can check things in earlier, they can sort things easier, from an operations perspective. Adding technology, vending, so the vending machines that we talked about earlier, being able to pick up a book on hold, or even the vending machine you see is in the New Braunfels City Hall. City Hall visitors and staff can check a book out of the vending machine, a New York Times bestseller for the weekend. So looking at other ways to expand the presence of the library. And you currently have a library book return at the mall. Maybe that's a good location to start to test some of these vending or locker ideas. There's some acoustical issues in the existing building. What can we do to help mitigate a little bit of the sound while we're waiting for a full renovation? Address the maintenance issues. Probably not all of them, because some of them I think tie to an expanded building, but some of them are important to get done now. Move the bus stop. Start to acquire the rest of the Liberty Street site, because that's a potential spot for both expansion and expanded parking that could serve both the library and some of downtown. And then expand the library hours, whether it's through vending, after-hours access, or additional staffed hours. And so this is part of what we studied for the Humanities grant. It was looking at Goodwin Street as a potential expansion of a programming space for the library. And so the image on the left is a rendering, and you can see there's a low fence that helps enclose the children that are attending an event so they aren't running out onto Goodwin Street. There's a covered trellis for a performer or a concert. There's additional seating. There's some nature play area that can be used for the kids to climb on, or while they're attending story times outside. Questions about short-term recommendations?
That outdoor space, the only access to it is through the library.
No, there'll be a gate on the outside.
There
It's
is.
not meant as a security. It's meant as a corral.
Okay.
if that makes sense. So the library has some programs out there right now, but there's a fear because they're so close to the street, and with the littlest kids out there, we want to make sure that they're kept safe. So it's more about that than enclosing it and access only for the library.
Would that then necessitate some type of apparatus like we have now that doesn't let you just run out with the book?
Yes, it would potentially require some extra security gates if that's an issue.
Okay, I get that, and that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
But how does that work then as a reading porch?
So
We just have to work on the logistics, right?
we'll have to work a little bit on the logistics. I think also my understanding of your community is that the loss of books, people aren't really stealing your books.
Okay.
You know, you live in a safe and honest community that even when they don't get checked out properly, generally they come back. So I don't know that that's a huge issue. I think also there's a way to allow people out there by requesting it from the library staff. But we can also put security gates. We can put a self-check machine right next to those doors to encourage people to check out before they go out. There's lots of ways we can staff it or use technology to make that safe.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then the other important part of the Humanities grant that we looked at is the Liberty Street side. And so making that entrance sequence a little bit more friendly. The library staff get comments from folks that have mobility issues that ramp is hard to see, hard to find, and it's long. And so one of the things we wanted to look at was how could we make it more visible, how could it feel more safe, how could it be easier to navigate. And that's part of what this is, as well as adding some of those outdoor seatings. Maybe they're rocking chairs, maybe they're picnic tables, to really kind of activate that and make it a friendly and welcoming space. The one other item that's not shown on here that came up recently is the library has overflow parking across Liberty, but there's not a very safe way for families or people with mobility issues to get across. And so we're looking at what could that path look like to connect the library entrance to the parking across Liberty to make that a safe process. And that could be part of this project as well. So looking at midterm, so a little bit further out, one of the options that we talked about was perhaps the mall location is expanded even a little bit more. It goes from vending and drop-off to having a space, and we called it Victorian Connections. The picture that you see is the Frisco Connection space. They have a children's collection. The collection is all on casters. It rolls out of the way, and there's technology in the floor so that city departments can have training sessions, there can be story times, there can be community homeowners association meetings in that space as well. And so it's a multi-use space that also has a children's collection. The other benefit of doing that as we move into the long-term recommendations, which have to do with expanding the building, is it gives a little bit of relief for the existing building and places for families to go for children's collection or whatever collection makes sense at the mall location. Expand the parking lot at Liberty Street. And then the third option was looking at implementing a bookmobile service. And this, I think, was interesting as we talked about it in the community meetings, that people still want some easy access to materials. And bookmobiles have seen kind of a resurgence in terms of delivering books, delivering programs. They can offer full county and city services. So in the bookmobile, you could register to vote, you could get a garage sale permit, pay a parking ticket, check out a book. And so that's an option as well. And then long-term recommendations. We've been reviewing with the library and the city 3 different options for expanding the existing building. The first one looks at expanding about 4,000 square feet towards Main Street. The blocks that you see on the side in this option would be relocated to another building. They're library staff options that could potentially be remote. It's not ideal, but it does keep the existing library parking intact where it is. So this is first floor. And second floor would expand above the 4,000 square foot expansion, as well as into the building to create a mezzanine, as well as a connector and a mezzanine on the other side to try to get as close to as we can the square footage that we need to hit that 66,000. One of the tricky things with this one is we would either really plan a way to phase this, or ideally really look for a temporary location for the library while this was happening. This is going to require drilling some piers into the existing slab and really being pretty disruptive to library services while the expansion happens. Option 2 looks at expanding out into the Liberty Street parking on the library side, as well as the Main Street expansion. So the gray blocks indicate where the expansion would be in the building. And then the mezzanine goes out even further. So in this option and the next option, the 2-story block in the parking lot could be built first. The library moves into that, and then you renovate the existing part of the building. And then the third option really looks at using all of the parking in front on the Liberty Street side of the library as a 2-story building. So again, this would be really easy phasing. The existing library services could fit into that space initially. You could still expand on the Main Street side to create that front porch to tie to downtown.
And one of the big differences here is that it doesn't, if you go back to option 2, which is the second floor of option 2, it takes up a bunch of space as a mezzanine level and kind of takes away from that grandiose feeling when you walk in with the high ceilings, et cetera. So with the third option, it's less. If you go to the next slide, it's a little bit less on that mezzanine level and focuses most of the growth out towards Main Street and then towards Liberty to keep that high ceiling look in the heart of what the library is today.
But where do you come in?
So,
Through the top.
Well, because if you come in through the 2-story building, you don't have the grandiose until you
Right.
get through it.
Right.
well, we could design in some grandiosity, for sure.
Gotcha.
And the way all of these options work is that there would be a Main Street entrance as well as a Liberty Street side entrance. And so there would be some connections, some additional security, and kind of a centralized staff area that would be able to see both entrances as they came in. So option 2 gives you about 68,500 square feet. So a little bit bigger than the program that you saw. And part of that has to do with the connection between the Main Street. We only want to put in one set of elevators. And so that connection makes sense to be able to use one set of elevators to get to the upstairs.
How wide is that connection? I mean, is it 6 feet? Is it 12 feet? Okay, 21 feet, she
Is
said.
Avery here? Avery knows the distance between the pillars off the top of his head at the library.
No.
Man, come on, Avery. I thought you had that answer at a meeting 2 weeks ago.
She slept since then.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I won't hold you to it. It just, gives me perspective.
Yeah, it's wide. It's not going to feel like a hallway. It's going to
Okay.
feel like a space. So this is just a chart that kind of summarizes the square footage. Your current library is 33,000 square feet. Option 1 gets you to about 64,000 square feet, but it does relocate a number of the library staff to a remote location, so that 10,000 square feet is another building to be identified or built for them. Option 2, it's about 78,000 square feet. And option 3, the last one, is about 71,000 square feet. And each of these includes your existing space, they include the mall space, if you decide to do it, and includes the expansion.
But even if we don't do the mall space, you could see that it's clearly possible to get to roughly 66,000 square feet on site. And that was one of the main purposes of this exercise, was to share with you and share with the public, who, again, over 65% of them said that's what they prefer, that it is possible. But it's just going to necessitate, some further investigation, necessitate conversations about parking, et cetera, in order to do that.
I'm confused on option 2 and 3. It looked like the footprint was bigger on 3 on the Liberty side. Is it only 1 story?
It is bigger on 3.
Yeah. But the mezzanine is less.
Yes.
But the mezzanine
So on option 3, it's less mezzanine space
Because
and
it's-
more space on the outside, versus option 2 had more mezzanine space and less building on the outside.
Yeah. Which makes it a lot easier to build and a lot easier to phase.
but a lot smaller. 7,000.
Slightly.
Yeah, 7,000.
Right. Slightly.
Which
And
is-
so some of the conversations that I'll want to have with y'all over the course of the next several months is, going through the breakdown of some of the additional services that came out of the process, to confirm which services, we're all okay with adding versus not, et cetera, and kind of finalize the program, if you will. And that program will get us to a square footage that we can hopefully all agree on. And then from there, we can also have conversations about, the options. How do we feel, makes more sense, et cetera. We'll start looking at cost implications to see maybe one of these options is just cost prohibitive because of something that we're just not thinking of yet. And so we hope to kind of just have that conversation over the next several months. But we hope that today was a good intro to the process, the plan, and kind of just where we're headed with this.
Yeah. It seemed like the Main Street edition was about 4,000 square feet on 1 floor, so 8,000
Correct.
square feet, which is practically the difference. I'm just, my mind's going other places that, maybe we don't do Main Street at all if we focus on. And if you don't do Main Street, then you don't need the mezzanine and the connection. I mean, it's a difference in square feet.
Right.
And if option 3 of
Right.
71,000 is good, there's another way to.
Right. And we did discuss that as a potential. We still would want to enhance
Maybe-
that
maybe
entrance
I'm
on Main
wrong.
Street, but you could do that without it having to be a 4,000 square feet,
Yeah.
addition.
And I may be completely wrong in my numbers, so I apologize.
No, it's fine. Other option we discussed on that Main Street side was just doing 1 floor, so that then have like a balcony type of setup as a second. So instead of it being an enclosed second floor, it being just a balcony setup that just overlooks just downtown and a parking garage.
Yeah. Actually, so if we look at this
Parade.
plan, I skipped over that part of
Yeah.
it because
And you might be able to see all the empty parking spaces that are in that parking garage.
this dash line and the dash box at the top, those are both meant to be roof decks.
They're what?
Meant to be roof decks.
Okay.
And so that's true in option 3. So we're really early in this process, right? And so we're looking at what stacking kind of looks like in terms of blocks. But if you tell us we really want to enclose that space, awesome. I do think that would be a really fun space to watch what's happening up and down Goodwin and be a kind of a quiet reading porch. But there's so many options right now. These are meant to be big ideas, so yeah.
That's an ideal place to watch the Christmas parade.
Right? That's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where we could have the VIP watch party for mayor and city council. Absolutely.
Great, well, thank you. Appreciate you being here to present this to us.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you very much.
All right, and then we're going to jump to number 3, the fiscal year 23 capital improvement plan update by Mr. Ken Gill.
You want to take a break?
Yes, I do. I'd like a 10-minute break.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We've got a quorum. Go ahead, Mr. Gill.
Okay, I'm going to go over the 22 letting schedule and where we are with those projects. And then following that, we'll go into the 23 letting schedule. And what I'm going to do real quickly is go over each of the projects and where we are, what the status is. First one is North Heights, which is the Phase 7 reconstruction. That's Nueces Street. The contractor has started. They're working from Laurent towards Navarro. They've got about 10% of the curb and gutter complete, and most all the storm sewer and inlets are put in. Next project is the residential street maintenance project. That's the seal coat project of Silver City, Greenbrier, several other neighborhoods. They've completed all the seal coat, and they're right now in the process of applying the Onyx application, which will seal the rock. So that one's moving along. Expect that one to be completed in October. Next one is Lone Tree Acres Drainage Subdivision, and that's the design of that drainage for Lone Tree Acres. We've completed all the preliminary right-of-way and survey information. Consultant is about 30% complete with the design of that project, but it's also moving along. Woodway Bridle Ridge, that one is near completion. There are currently installing the hot mix overlay right now as we speak, and should be done with that today. They've finished Bridle Ridge, and Woodway's the last section. Filing that will be the buttons going around the curves, but that project is nearly complete. Next one, Airline Mockingbird Mill and Overlay. That one was completed back in June. Dairy Road reconstruction, the design phase, a consultant is 60% complete, and we're expecting completion of the design by December. We've got the plans, we're reviewing those right now. Crestwood Phase 2, that one is we have completed the south side of the road, the driveways, the sidewalk, and the pavement section. Traffic is currently running on that. The north side, they are working on the sidewalk, removing the sidewalks and driveways, and sometime in late October, they'll begin the paving operations and moving forward with that. Expected completion is March of 2023, which is their time frame. We're hoping it's quicker. Yes, we do.
I don't think it'll ever be finished.
Next one is the CDBG, the pump station that Katie mentioned. The contractor has started. They're installing the wet wells, which is the most difficult part, digging deep, putting in the wet wells for the pump stations, but they have started. And they're about 10% complete, and we expect completion of that project fall of 2023. The next one, Laurent Street water line replacement, the design. Consultant is about 90% complete with the design, and then that one will show up on the 23 schedule for the construction. 16-inch high service water line connection. That one, as you will know, we let that project and awarded it last council meeting. Expect that project to be complete September of 23. Biggest concern with that one and reason it takes so long is the securing of the materials. Next one is Regional Wastewater Clarifier Project. That project, as you will remember, that's put on hold. We're working on the regional evaluation, wastewater plant evaluation. That project is ongoing. We've got the contractor working. They're about 60% complete. They're evaluating the system, both operational and condition, and they'll get the final report. We're expecting that in January. The next one is Main Street Sanitary Sewer Line Replacement. If you've been by there, they're working on Yopon Street, putting the sewer line in, replacing it. We have contractors about 40% complete. Advantage of that one is we have no more back truck out there vacuuming out the sewer lines. So that was the one thing we pushed that contractor early on in that contract, so we don't have to be out there every day. But they're about 40% complete. Tanglewood Phase 1, which is the design of the utility and streets. The engineering has submitted 90% review, and we're on target to complete that November 22nd and have plans ready for the proposals section. College Park, same thing. It's in the design phase. The consultant's about 50% design and expect 60% submittal in October.
Can we touch on that? Is it October the 12th when there's that community meeting for Fish Pond?
Yeah.
Can we
I'll
just
let Mike
give them
touch on that.
a brief update on what the street stuff is, since a lot of the neighborhood's going to be there?
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be prepared for that.
Thank you.
That's just a yes answer, guys.
Oh,
That's
I
just
thought you
yes.
wanted to explain it. Okay. Which one? Bon Air, that's the same thing, another design project for streets and utilities. Again, consultant is about 50%. We're expecting 60% submittal. All of those three neighborhood projects you'll see as we talk about in a 23 letting schedule. Lee Sack's not here, so we just eliminated his project. No, it's on hold. The facilities assessment's going to talk about that as in determining needs for the environmental office. Citywide LED project, that one is about 90% complete. AEP is wrapping up their last few lights, and we're beginning to work on their agreement for the next section, phase 2.
And phase 1, as a refresher, was everything south of Airline.
And those are on the major thoroughfares, right? Those are not
No, it's supposed to be every light.
Every light.
every light.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We do know.
I just
So that
haven't
project,
noticed
real
it.
quick, is several phases. So first phase was the lights south of Airline. Second phase is the lights north of Airline. And then third phase is a photometric study to look at just where we might have gaps. And then phase 4 is actually looking at the arms. You know, if you drive down Main Street as an example, you know, you might see an arm that sticks out, 10 feet and one that's only 4 feet.
Right.
And it looks weird, right? And so we want to, over time, rectify and have consistent arms for the lights. And so that's part of the phases. Trimming trees is one of the phases. And so it's a multi-year project to improve lighting in our community overall.
Right.
And each year we have in the CIP $250,000 for that.
And just to let you know, as we're moving forward with installing, coordination with TxDOT on lighting of their roadways, and for years now, when we do an intersection improvement, we always put up lights on our signals. Those they've been LED for the last 10 years that we put in. So we're moving forward with keeping current.
I understand that the only lights that are going to get changed into this program are AEP lights. If you have a security light in your place or your place of business, that's up to you. You have to call AEP so they can change the lights.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And just for the public's benefit, AEP is really, if you haven't paid your bill on those, they're disconnecting them. They really are trying to get out of that business of security lights. So if you got it, keep it going.
Okay.
Next one is the O'Connor Elementary. I think Katie touched on that. That's on, we didn't get the grant, but we are going to be reapplying for another TxDOT grant in 23.
Are we still going to do Stroman since they're not physically having school there?
They are having school. That's where the Mitchell, they transferred all the kids over to that school.
Okay,
is what
so
I understood. So there are kids in that school.
Yeah.
So this sidewalks are going to be for the old Victoria High then?
Yes, it'd be for Stroman, basically.
Stroman now, yes.
And next one is Leary Lane Sidewalk Project. That one project let last, and we awarded it last week at council. Contractor, we're going to be having our pre-construction with them, and the big push is going to be to get that before the school year of next year, and I think that can happen. Next one is traffic signal at Water and Moody Street. Again, we awarded the contract last week. Did speak with the contractor, and he's pushing really hard to get and expedite those signal materials, the poles and the mast arms. Ben Wilson Corridor Project, we have, that one is expected to be complete in July of '23. Contractor is completed all the services. He's cleaned all the sewer lines out there, and we're waiting on his traffic plan so he can close down the lane and start beginning the heavy, what I'll call the heavy construction. He has submitted all the submittals for all the products, including the clock tower and the display items on there. So that was a big item for him to get complete. But they are working. It seems a little slow, but I think once they get moving on the street, it'll go a lot quicker.
Ken, do you know if they're, I mean, because the project's already done, they went ahead and expanded that inlet box to a bigger box?
They are doing more to the drainage.
Yes.
They're not only expanding the box, but they're also putting more underground storm sewer in. So the box is great, no matter how, you mean the box on Red River or the inlet throat box?
No, I think, were they going to put one right in front of the Commons building or somewhere around there?
Yes, they're redoing some of that drainage, but what's more important is that storm sewer.
Right.
And if you'll remember, no matter how big or how many throat openings you have, it's that line on Red River that once it backs up, it doesn't matter how many throat openings you've got. That's what's critical in that, for that intersection.
Right.
But they
are adding a parallel storm sewer line on Ben Wilson. So theoretically, there is a place for more water to go.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, if it still backs up, it's still going to back up, just maybe not as quickly or as easily as before.
Yeah, because there's also some inlets at the beginning of, well, I guess as you come out of, it's a college. And all in our subdivision, those inlets, you know, they need to be cleaned up pretty quick because, we'll get all that water.
Right, those will be part of the project, clean those inlets up. If they need to be bigger boxes, a lot of them are small.
Yes.
So yes, that's
Okay.
in the project.
Thank you, sir.
Next one is the Kelly Creek Drainage Project, which was up in North Crest. The Twin 90s have failed. That one completed back in September.
We're still in September, Ken.
Finished back in August. We completed the final payment in September.
By September.
Stated design. That one, the contractor, the consultant is working on that. They're about 60% complete. That is going to include not only just the water system, the water plant, water system, the wells, all the auxiliary items outside of the water plant. It's also going to include the wastewater. So we got to remember, what we're planning on doing is doing this as a phased project. Even though it's designed as one, we'll phase it out as doing the water first and then coming back and picking up the wastewater. So they're designing it with that concept in mind to do it 2 phases. But we're expecting that again to be completed in January. They've done the radial path study.
I'll do it right now.
They've been to all both plants. They've got all the information, so we're moving on forward with that one, and it's going good. Next one is Tracy's project. It's fire station remodel, and we're expecting completion on that February of '23. They've completed the structure hardening, and now they're working on the interior. In Jason's project, which is a duck pond, that one's expected completion in October 23. And demolition has begun of the sidewalk. Trees and gazebos, of course, will also be removed, and then excavation to begin in October. A couple of projects I don't have up there, or actually one left, is the inflow and infiltration study. The consultant has about 90% complete with the modeling of our system, and he's installed all the flow monitors, which is 31 of them across the city of Victoria. and we've had one rain since he put those in. So we need some rain for those to work, so we may have to extend those flow monitoring days. And once he gets that data collected, he'll put it into the model, and then we'll move forward to find out which areas are giving us the biggest issues of inflow and infiltration, so that when we can move into this part of this project is to do some smoke testing, some television inspection, so we can identify which is the critical area. And that's it for James for the 22. Does anybody have any questions on the project so far?
I have a question. Okay, the estimates, and if we break down the different funds, the general fund portion, how much are we over, or are we over in what we had estimated? Because when you add them up, the total comes to 41 million for the project proposals, and the estimate was 37. Where are we over? Are we spending general fund, wastewater?
As far as you mean over
The estimates.
the estimates, we're over on, I would say most of it went towards the revenue side. But as we were over on some, we were under on others. I mean, we've worked with finance to balance those projects.
Could we get a breakdown of those
Here, let me,
eventually?
Yeah, we will.
I will get you a
And-
breakdown, but one thing I do
Cool.
want to say is the project proposals, on that is the proposal from the contractor. Those projects that are completed, that's not the completed price.
Sure.
So some of those will come down.
Sure.
But we'll get you a breakdown of estimate, proposal, and then what the final cost was.
And also, isn't this skewed because Crestwood doesn't have a fiscal year 2022
Correct.
estimate? It's a fiscal year 2021.
Right.
So
Right.
that's the
And
largest
that's why I
chunk.
didn't put a total on those numbers in 22.
Ken, on Leary Lane that I'm thrilled that we're finally doing, are we going to make the situation worse in the short run? Is there going to be a place for people to walk while we're doing construction? Or they'll still be out in the street?
They'll probably still be out in the street, but the contractor, since it's such of a small, I would call small project, he'll have at times where he'll have to close the road when they're pouring concrete, but more than likely, he'll do it in sections, so as they finish, that section will be ready to walk on, and then they may have to go back to their,
Okay.
the route that they're going on now. But we're hoping to, like I said, finish it before that 23 school year.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
We gotta run through these a little quicker so we can finish by 4,
I'll hit it.
Ken.
23 residential. I'm just gonna, you've got that sheet in front of you, and I'm gonna go through them real quick. We want to advertise in October. Mill and overlay, we already have advertised. We've opened bids. That'll be coming to you in October 18th. And I'm just gonna let you read through the rest of them since we do need to move quick. As you can see, it is a very aggressive schedule to bid these projects out. And key on the date of the award, that's when you'll be seeing them in front of you, in front of council.
Tell you
Does
what,
anybody have any questions on those projects?
what jumps out at me is Crestwood Phase 3, which was originally Crestwood Phase 1. And I think we swapped that because the other end was a lot worse.
Correct.
I think it was 3.3 million
It's-
when we first looked at it.
That's true. They were all in the
Right.
3 million range. Now, one thing we are gonna do for Crestwood real quick is, we're gonna bid that when it shows it early. And Crestwood 2 may not be done, but we're timing it such that when they can start the pre-construction and actually start setting barricades, it's actually just seamless. Move those barricades from 2 over to 3.
And the one-way direction changes.
Right, it's gonna switch to westbound. And I will let Jesus go. De Leon Plaza is the next big one.
I have a quick question before we get off the CIP list. I thought we had something in there for the safety building, the design or something. I don't see it anywhere.
Yes, so I'm going to hit on that as well.
Okay.
But yes, so we do have some funding in the CIP 23 for that design. We envision taking the design contract to council at our second meeting in October. Allison's already reviewed the bulk of that AIA agreement that we would enter into with that architect. We do have, I was hoping to have that number today, but he didn't send it to us in time. But I have said publicly at a partnership meeting that the cost estimate for that facility's gone from roughly 30 million to 33 million. And so part of the conversation that we would need to have over the course of the next few months is just having a conversation about allocation of additional funds or just options for that. Because obviously as the architect starts the design process, we need to solidify how we do that. We've also already begun trying to put together a draft of an RFP for a construction manager at risk, because we would actually put that out here in the next month or two to hopefully have a construction manager on board by December or January, so that they can work in partnership with the architect to finalize the pricing, because we do have the construction for that budgeted in fiscal year 24, which we normally sign off on that in May of next year, and ultimately with the budget in the summer. So for us, it's imperative that we get this design process started so that we have that guaranteed maximum price from the construction manager at risk in time for the adoption of our budget to know for exactly how much money we need. And so that's part of the reason why we're trying to move that design contract as quickly as possible. But that's where we are with it. And you heard Gilbert earlier when he was talking about debt capacity talk about how we have 15 million in CO set aside for that, and then 10 million would be paid for through VS3C. And he also showed how there's, some debt capacity still in 24. So naturally, one of the conversations that we'll have to have is about allocating additional CO availability to that project, and just other options as well. But that's a forthcoming conversation.
Good. Thank you.
Two other quick, if you'll note on the 23, those are construction projects. We also have Guy Grant Design and North Street.
I'm going to pull a Gilbert. No, then I just make too much noise. Anyway, all right, so wasn't planning on talking about parking, but I want to spend a few minutes talking about parking. In retrospect, should have planned to talk about parking anyway, because I know that that's the biggest concern, obviously, that even some of you have about the De Leon Plaza expansion project. But so before we introduce our consultant, Frieza Nichols, and Nick and Brian to come up, I want to briefly sort of, refresh your memories on what our game plan is for parking. So our downtown master plan obviously did look at parking. This is straight out of our downtown master plan, which in essence shows public parking lots and private parking lots. And the reason why this is important is because everybody recognizes that there is a need for additional parking lots, right? And while some might suggest that it's our responsibility to build more parking, really the low-hanging fruit is the best opportunity to improve parking, which is partnering with the owners of private parking lots to have public parking. Obviously, yes, it's an expensive endeavor to build a parking lot or a parking garage, but it's much more cost effective to simply partner through shared parking agreements with private property owners. And even if we have to share in the expensive maintenance of those lots, it's still significantly cheaper than us having to build a new parking garage or a new lot. And so this is simply just to show you a graphic of those parking lots that are public versus private. Public are sort of the, a blue-green color, and the private parking lots are the orange ones. I see you all squinting at it. We can send this to you, but this is simply just intended to show you that there's way more private parking lots than there are public parking lots. And I've got a couple of pictures and a video that I want to show you just to prove that point, because we wanted to look into it. So,
Sure. De Leon Plaza is the one with the blue around it.
De Leon Plaza is right here,
Right there.
I think.
No.
It's probably right.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this right here is the One O'Connor parking garage. This is the Prosperity parking garage. This is the small library parking lot. So I'm going to ask James to pull up a couple of pictures and a video because specifically one O'Connor was mentioned today. And we actually, the fire department, as you know, has an awesome drone, and they love to use that thing for random stuff. And so we asked them to literally fly the drone during what we would thought would be, go back to the pictures, James, to what we would thought would be the busiest days of the summer of downtown, which is when they're jury days, right? And there are dates at the top, and so this is August 15th, as an example. The top of 1 O'Connor is completely empty. If we were to shift over to Prosperity Bank, the top of Prosperity Bank parking garage is the same. If you click on August 22nd, it's practically not parked.
That's a private parking.
That's my point, right? Yeah, right? So we're talking about the fact that there are parking spaces available downtown, but are privately owned, privately managed, and the low-hanging fruit opportunities for us to try and establish agreements with these private management groups or private owners for shared use of parking, because it's much cheaper for us to come up with some type of arrangement with, let's say, this ownership group than it is for us to build a parking garage, right? And so the point that we're trying to make, that we have the data to prove, is that there are enough parking spaces downtown, they're just not available to the public. And so rather than spending a bunch of money building a new parking garage, why not first try and partner with the private owners to make some of their private parking spaces available to the public? If you go to the video, James, this video is on a Monday, and so you can kind of get a feel for what the parking looks like, you know, in the area that we would close off, which obviously it's all full. But we wanted to take a video to kind of show the areas around it, to kind of give everybody a sense of, okay, are people actually parking, you know, on the side streets? Are they not? Are they taking full advantage of some other parking? And you're going to see I think, did it get stuck, James? Now you can just click play. It was playing. And so it'll kind of just go around, just look at different things. Obviously that parking lot's always full, so we know that. It's not until it sort of flips around to the other side that you kind of start to see some availability. But there's not much parking usage over here. I mean, you've got this parking lot right here that's available. You've got parking here available. You've got parking here available. You can kind of start to see that there are parking spaces that are open. They're just maybe not seen as public, right? There's a little bit of the parking garage on top of Prosperity that you can kind of see has parking spaces.
Jesus, can you also incorporate a little bit more spaces for the handicap or for the, you know?
Yeah, that's easy.
Okay.
That's just us designating parking lots, parking spaces like around the plaza as handicap spots.
Okay.
You can see there's parking along side streets, side street parking available, side street parking available. And so the point of this exercise is to just show the parking spaces that are available even on a day when you do have court dates. You get the point of it. It'll eventually kind of swing around to kind of see that. This is the area that Maureen was talking about, potentially acquiring the rest of this block to just make all of this public parking. She didn't mention this, but this is a potential partnership opportunity with Victoria College, especially as they look at activating this space in the back. It might be an opportunity for us to partner with them for some designated parking on this side that they can also use for their special events. Hard to see the top of the 1 O'Connor parking garage, but overall you get the gist of where we're headed. And so when we talk about strategy for parking spaces downtown, we believe the low-hanging fruit is partnering with private parking lot owners to make that parking public. Our downtown master plan actually did make recommendations very specifically in a very strategic manner on how to proceed. So as an example, the master plan actually suggests in the 1 to 3 year range, focusing on the expansion of De Leon Plaza, and not until the 5 or 7 year range to focus on a parking garage, because they recognize that there's parking spaces and some opportunities there. So just simply because we're having a conversation about expanding De Leon Plaza doesn't mean that we're forgetting about the challenges associated with parking. I hope that when Jeff was sharing his opinion, he was sharing it as Jeff and not as president of the chamber. Because as a board member of the Chamber of Commerce, right, I'd like to think the Chamber of Commerce would have a different opinion about the transformational impact that a project like this could have to our downtown in terms of spurring some business growth, right? So, anywho, I just wanted to put that out there to convey to you that we are working on it. Danielle and Kate are working on actually already reaching out to other downtowns to find examples of what these partnership agreements would look like, just to really start kind of approaching some of these owners. We always envision using some of the TERS revenue to potentially go towards some of these parking arrangements because we know that that's one of the biggest issues. And so, again, it might cost us some money to enter into these agreements because we might have to contribute towards the maintenance of these parking lots, but it's way cheaper to do that than having to build a parking garage. But we haven't forgotten about it. And as we actually go into some of the renderings that they'll go through for the De Leon Plaza expansion, you'll actually see that they include the parking garage that the downtown master plan recommends, which is on that whole half a block that the county owns, literally just right down the street from De Leon Plaza. And we'll make sure to point it out, when you go through it. So before I turn it over to Brian to go through the design of De Leon Plaza, any questions on parking? Great. So Brian from Friesen Nichols is here to talk to you about the De Leon design. We're super excited about it because it looks really nice. I'll tell you right now, there's going to be some sticker shock at the end, but spoiler alert, it's awesome and totally worth it. So.
All right, Brian, you got 30 minutes.
Less than that, because we still got another one to go through.
How long do you need then?
We're going to be done at 4.
Yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
While that's getting loaded up, I just want to say thank you for having us today. We're looking forward to presenting to you guys what we've been working on for the last 3.5 months. It's been an exciting project. We're excited to see the execution of this. We feel that this is really going to be a transformative project for the city and for downtown.
What happened? Can you just close? Go to. There we go. All right.
Okay. Am I running this thing now? Okay. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, how we got here to this presentation today. So, like was just alluded to, in 2021, there was a downtown master plan that was completed. And one of the catalyst projects that it identified was expansion of De Leon Plaza and sort of the engagement of the north side of the plaza into a more pedestrian-friendly realm to sort of further facilitate not only economic growth, but also the programming and the events that go on downtown. And like Jesus said, that plan recommended a 1 to 3 year implementation window. So kudos to the city for being right on time with that. So leading after that, the city engaged with Friesen Nichols to provide a preliminary design scope of work for the expansion of the plaza project. And so we've been working towards a 30% design level of completion for the plaza project. And so our scope of work in that project was to include a full survey so that we would know exactly, where the bones are buried, so to speak, in that area. Downtowns are notorious for having stuff that's unseen or has been covered up. So a full survey was done. We also did some geotechnical borings to investigate what we're dealing with in terms of what's underneath Forest Street, in terms of, its suitability for a plaza space. And then what we did next was we had a site plan confirmation phase. I know everybody has seen the exhibit from the master plan, which we'll show you here in a minute. But that was sort of a planning level document. And our job was to first sort of bring that back down into reality. And so through that process, we're rapidly completing a 30% level set of drawings, which include architecture, landscape and site design, roadway and drainage, and electrical, which is also a big component of this project. And at the end, we will share with you an opinion of probable cost at this stage. So again, this is the drawing that everybody was alluding to and everybody's seen. This was in the downtown master plan. This was kind of shown as the first phase over here on this side, south of Forest Street, with potentially a second phase to come. We looked at this and we had some concerns, not only of the programming elements that were shown here, but just the spatial adjacencies and everything that was going on in this. So the first thing we wanted to do is get with everybody who had some input and see if we could flesh this out. So that was our site plan confirmation process that we initially started out with. So the first thing we did, again, was review what was proposed during the master plan. We looked at, the elements that were proposed, what made sense, what didn't. Like I mentioned, we did a due diligence phase that includes survey and geotechnical. Then there was an ad hoc committee that was formed with members of City Manager's Office, the Parks Department, the Main Street Program, and Public Works. Some of our Main Street folks interviewed a lot of the large event organizers that use Forest Street now in a temporary capacity to see what their needs were and how best this project could facilitate what they do and potentially expand their offerings on De Leon Plaza. And then what we did then was we developed several alternates. You can see some examples of some of the sketches that we did. We reviewed and we tweaked and we sent it back and we looked and we tweaked and we sent it back. And so I think at the end of the day, we came up with a pretty good plan that meets a variety of needs from not only the passive user, but also the adjacent business owners, the people that come in and host large events. So what we'll show you next is this is the site plan. So I'm going to show you this first, and then we're just going to go over the major key elements of the plaza, and then we'll get into a little bit deeper dive into what those are going to look like. So just to orient ourselves, this is the Forest Street running right through here. 1 O'Connor is here. Obviously, the gazebo is here. So what we are proposing to do is to continue with a paving scheme similar to what you have right now. We plan to completely and permanently close down Forest Street. The idea is that, and one of the things that we found with the master plan drawing was that the street was never really gone. And so it sort of felt like, did we just kind of make the sidewalks larger of De Leon Plaza, or did we, have a street in there? And so our thought was that if we're going to do this, we need to do it on a grand scale, and we need to design the street out of the plaza space. So while the street is no longer there, you still have access, and there would be a bollard line here and on here to facilitate service vehicles, food trucks, stuff like that could come onto the plaza, but public traffic would go away.
I have a question about that, though, and I'll try and be quick. But that's where I was getting to. If food trucks and such can get there for events, the street is still there that traffic could travel on it. So how would we stop that?
So the way that would be controlled is these bollards right here would be removable or retractable. And so it's a matter of almost like a garage door. Somebody there is manning the food trucks entering onto, so the bollards would depress, the food trucks would drive over, and then the bollards would come back up. So it would be a highly controlled process to manage the traffic.
And through the design, with the continuation of the sidewalk look, it's not going to look, there's not going to be no curb cuts to make it look like there was a street. It's going to all look just
I mean,
straight.
I've also seen some places that simply say, no traffic or no access after 10:30 in the morning or
Yeah.
something like
But
that.
here, that's not an option because of the design, right? I mean, you look at the permanent stage in the middle. I mean, there's literally nowhere for a car for through traffic.
Yeah, it would not be intuitive to think, unless you drove down Forest Street every single day of your life, if you were just a casual observer, you would not think to turn onto this area. It's going to be like the road was never there, and that's kind of the point we're trying to get to. So then, moving along, and I'm trying to move along quick here, we would have a performance pavilion right here in the center, which would be kind of the main jewel of the plaza. It would facilitate anything from, a 2 or 3 piece, band that comes out to play at one of the, lunchtime events to up to and including a symphony orchestra. So it'd be sized appropriately enough to accommodate both, but as and when you have events, we recognize that that's not going to be every single weekend and every single day you're not going to have events, but it would also be a nice shady area where people can come out of the office buildings, come out from the courthouses and have, their lunch underneath here. And we'll talk a little bit about the architecture and the shade that it provides here in a minute. But that's a performance pavilion. We have a water feature splash pad right here with some seating.
Not a splash pad.
Water feature.
A water feature area in this location, and then right next to that we have a new restroom facility, which was also indicated in the downtown master plan as sort of a catalyst project, and having a public restroom downtown was something that plan really highly encouraged. And then on this side here as well, we'd have that same expanded street condition, and all of these pavers would match and feather into what you have there existing. And then one other thing I'd like to point out is that we thought it was important, especially for the large performances, to expand the lawn area of the plaza. So this area right here is actually bringing the current edge of the grass of the existing plaza further north towards 1 O'Connor to provide a little bit more of a lawn seating area. I'm going to turn it over to Nick Cicava real quick.
Brian, before you hang up, right quick, are those bathrooms going to be available all the time or just during events?
That'll be up to us. That's an operational question.
Okay.
So that's up to us. As of now, we're approaching it as predominantly special events, maybe during business hours because there might be people going for events during the day. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how we're approaching it now. But that's an operational decision that we can, address or change or whatever. But as of now, we're focusing it on not being a 24/7 bathroom, it being during the day, during business hours, maybe some limited hours on the weekend for visitors, but not overnight, and during special events for sure as well.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to turn it over to Nick. He's going to talk a little bit about the underground implications of this.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Yeah, I just wanted to touch briefly on the civil engineering side of this project. Once we remove the roadway, we have to regrade the whole site, and with that regrading comes some drainage work. Right now, all of the drainage drains from the Bridge Street side to the Main Street side. They're from left to right. But what we're going to try to do is to try to make that a more pedestrian-friendly, smooth, flat area that blends seamlessly with the lawn area of De Leon. So we'll have some additional area drains that collect stormwater and channel that stormwater away. There's also a 12-inch water line that runs underneath Forest Street that we'll have to relocate and also add additional water services for the water feature, the restroom facility, and some of the irrigation improvements that we'll have with the project. The restroom facility will also have a sanitary sewer service that will be needed, and that sewer service will run also to Main Street. So it'll run from the left side where the restroom facility is over to the Main Street side. The last thing I'll touch on is the traffic signalization at the bridge intersection and the main intersection. We looked at those traffic signals and determined whether we would still need them. We concluded that yes, we do want to keep the traffic signals primarily for the pedestrian safety element. There are pedestrian signals that are on those existing light poles. There will be light pole relocations and traffic signal relocations involved with those enhanced paver crosswalks that you see on Bridge and on Main. So we will have some traffic signal work associated with the project.
Will the electrical box that's sitting over here in front of the gazebo, will it stay on the gazebo side, or are you planning to put one over there closer to the stage?
Yeah, so the boxes you're referring to are basically right on the
Yes,
sidewalk?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so those will be relocated over here to somewhere in this location. We've determined that those controller cabinets only control these signals right here. So all of this is going to have to be reworked anyway. So moving the box is not going to be, we can essentially put it wherever we can fit it in now.
Can you describe to me the ADA elements?
So the ADA component of this is actually going to be greatly improved. The idea here is that there would be no grade change across the entire plaza. So what that means is that when you cross the street from one side to the other, this entire zone, there's no steps, no curbs, nothing like that. It's all plaza. And that includes, rolling up onto the grass. And then additionally, and I'm glad you brought that up, so you can tell we've eliminated, there's sort of a hub and spoke alignment here within the current plaza design. We've eliminated this walk, and this walk leading up to the monument to sort of maximize our open space for lawn seating. And if you'll recall, the only walkway that has accessible route to the gazebo is right over here. So there's a 2-step stair here, and I think a 2 or 3-step stair here. So our plan is to have a graded sidewalk that would be accessible on either end here, so that we would eliminate the stairs essentially out of the plaza altogether.
Okay, good.
And the other side of the plaza is not impacted.
Yeah, everything sort of south of the gazebo is going to remain untouched.
It's a bandstand.
Yeah.
And there is an ADA, leading to the monument.
Right.
For whatever it's worth, for someone that may want to take a selfie that close, I guess.
Yeah.
There's some existing walks that are around the actual flag plaza itself. They're in horrible shape. They're getting heaved by those massive trees, and so we want to go ahead and just take all of that out. And best we can tell, the only reason it's there is for some sort of, taking pictures or accessible route up to that area. So we would provide an accessible route right here to get in front of the monument and read the inscriptions and things like that.
And there are no benches. The benches are all gone. The
Well,
benches are all gone.
the benches, we're adding back additional bench seating here and here, and then we're going to significantly reduce the number of benches that you have elsewhere. I think there's something like 46 benches in De Leon Plaza, and they kind of, face in different directions. And we plan to rework that slightly with upgraded site furniture, stuff like that. So there will be benches on the project. They'll just be maybe in different locations and maybe, placed a little bit more intuitively.
Okay, just every time I've seen it, most of them are in use. It depends on the direction the sun is.
Yeah.
But yeah, they all get used.
Right.
So what impact does this have on existing trees in the plaza?
So the only tree, there's one tree right here. It's the, Danielle, it's your favorite tree? An aqua tree that is in poor to less than ideal shape anyways. So the only tree that's going to be impacted by, removal is going to be this tree right here. All the other trees will, there will be a fairly significant tree protection effort that goes along with a project like this. So that leads us to basically a companion image to what you saw in the master plan with the updated program and the updated site plan. So I'd like to walk you through kind of this, if I could. So as you come down both Main and Bridge, these sidewalks are going to remain generally as they are now with a certain expansion. Right there where the former Forest Street was, you can see the bollard line that's right here, so that these are the ones that are going to go into the ground whenever you have trucks or something like that coming onto the plaza deck for either an event or a delivery or something like that.
I think, I know it's really in the weeds, but as opposed to those dropping down where there might be utilities under there, and in the interest of cost and maintenance, why don't we just do removable ones that have padlocks on the bottom?
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, that's certainly an option. And that may be,
I don't think it needs to be that fancy where they're...
Right.
Yeah. Right. It may be something that gets, the budget just doesn't... Exactly. So right down here, as you can see, we've got, and we'll show you a little bit better view of this, but we've got a low wall right here that sort of encapsulates the flag area, and I know that we're planning to have a new installation for the Victoria Founders place in this general area. So with a backdrop of that and the monument, we have some cafe tables right here with a low wall, potentially some signage on that wall indicating that this is, De Leon Plaza. We will have a series of street trees along the north end of the plaza with small seating walls, which can also be not only for the tree planters, but they can also be used for seating. In each one of those planters, we will have electrical infrastructure, not only for Christmas lights and uplights, but also for plug-ins for the food trucks, so that they don't have to run on generators when they're on the plaza.
And you can see the parking garage that was shown in the downtown master plan.
Right here. So as we go across, here is the performance pavilion. Again, we have a loading area here so that when trucks come in, they can just drop their ramp directly onto the elevation of the stage, which will be roughly about 30 inches above the grade. And then we'll have, planters flanking each side. The water feature is right here with the restroom building attached to a shade covering, so that there will be an area of refuge from the sun for families that want to let their kids play in the water but also want to sit in the shade. And then I will also point out across the street, we're planning, and we'll see a little bit of a zoom in on this, but we're planning to have a screen, or we're proposing to do a screen right here on this county lot, so that the bookends of this plaza aren't a county parking lot and then everything we're doing here. It's going to provide a little bit of screening to that corner, and we think that would really complete sort of the room concept of that edge of the plaza.
All right, we got 5 minutes. Man.
Okay, I'm going. So here's just a blow up. You can see the pavilion right here, the water feature with their tables, a little bit better idea of the restroom building and that screen across the street. This is that Founders Plaza corner with the bronzes here, the cafe tables here, food trucks, etc. So now you're starting to get into the visualization of what this potentially could look like on an event day. This is showing essentially, a noontime concert with a festive scene, etc. Splash pad or water feature, excuse me, food trucks, etc. So that's where we're trying to get with this, and that's the type of engagement that we're trying to get with the community. And then
Where's our Christmas tree going to go?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. So this right here is a night scene, and this would be placed on the water feature. So it's wintertime, nobody's in the water feature anyways, so we would place the city's Christmas tree in this area over here by the restroom building. Again, here's that low wall I mentioned with the cafe seating for people to come out of the office buildings and have a place to sit on the plaza. Again, we'll have holiday light opportunities over here. Again, lighting on the stage. This performance pavilion will have a number of key elements to be able to, meet whatever programming needs you have. I'm not going to go through the architecture just because we don't have time.
Right there in front of the flags, it looks like you're taking up part of the street that was coming on Main. Are you taking up one lane?
No.
You're not?
No.
It's flush with the sidewalk?
Yeah, nothing's changing on Main in terms of pass-through traffic or anything.
Oh, it kind of looks like on the diagram.
It looks like it because we're extending the brick paver look in an area that doesn't exist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the sidewalk's really wide there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now the fun part. So our OPC at the current time is just bottom line number is $5.8 million. What that includes is a construction cost here, which this is actual contractor costs of about $4.4 million. Now that includes a 25% contingency, which is also, subject to go down or up depending on as further we get into this. But I just will point that out that there is a 25% contingency that we're carrying at this point, but that number is $4.4 million for the project.
How much did we cut out by not getting the fancy bollards?
$1 million.
$40,000. So then we looked at this and we saw that this thing was kind of getting, potentially a little bit out of line in terms of budget. So we did recognize that there were a few obvious alternates that we could price into the project. The first one being a recirculating system for the water feature. What we have in the budget right now is what's called a pass-through system, where you use potable water, it drains away to the sewer, and it's just 1 gallon in, 1 gallon out. You can regulate that so that it's more water efficient, putting timers and activators on it, stuff like that, but it is a water cost. The flip side of that coin is you can do a recirculating system, which actually is essentially like you're building a pool. There's filters, there's UV treatment, stuff like that, but it does elevate the cost significantly. So we put that in as an alternate of about $350,000. Additionally, we have some lighting and signalization improvements that we felt like were potentially would want to be included in the project, such as architectural period, arms, mast arms, bases, that type of thing for the traffic lights, which we could easily pull out. And then we also had a pretty significant number for site lighting upgrades, recasting the existing bronze fixtures, adding more of those to the project, so that obviously could come out as well. And then finally, other costs to consider, services, construction services, as well as testing is always a part of a project that a lot of people may not necessarily include at this stage, but that's a definitely real number. There is the architectural and engineering fees to go from where we're at now to final design, bid, and construction. And then we also have identified probably a pretty significant cost out of AEP to get the expanded electrical service onto this project. So we don't know what that number is right now, but it has the potential of being fairly high. So when you roll all of those up, you're looking at a number of 5.8 and some change. So again, whatever time I have left, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Jesus.
Yeah, I was just going to add on the funding real quick. So obviously it's early in the process, right? There could be some value engineering to get the price down. But where we are with the funding, so currently our CIP has $2.5 million in it for this project. We always knew that we were going to need more money. We didn't know exactly how much. And we're not talking about the library. Go back. Did you accidentally press a button? Anyway, there you go. So so there are options to explore. So out of that 2.5, for example, some of it is coming from VS3C, only $500,000. So there's potential to explore some opportunity with VS3C to increase that amount some. We have some money from the ARPA funds. And as we know, there's some potential opportunity to shuffle around some funds from ARPA to potentially allocate some more dollars to this project. There's also potentially the opportunity to approach some additional foundations in town to see about supporting. So for example, currently we do have the support of one foundation, the Shanklin Foundation, to go towards the water feature. We had a really good meeting with them about shifting, over $350,000 that they have committed to the city for a splash pad at Riverside to instead take that money and apply towards this project and the water feature. But there might be some other foundations in town that might be interested in some naming rights opportunity. The clearest example is, of course, the Performance Pavilion, right? I mean, that's a really great opportunity to have another foundation provide $250,000 or $500,000 or something for some naming rights for that pavilion. So there's some creative outside the box ideas that we could continue to explore over the next couple of months to, increase the availability of funding. But this is where we are with it. And so what we would like, and not today, but over the course of the next month or two as we meet, just feedback on the design, feedback on the budget, feedback on your level of openness to us thinking creatively to come up with more money to complete the project. It obviously has a potential to be very transformational, and so we'll just go from there. And happy to answer any questions or take any comments that you might have now.
Were you looking to finish this project by 2040 for the 200th
Yes.
celebration?
So I asked Brian that same question yesterday, and he said that this potentially could take 10 to 12 months to complete. And so ideally we would probably start construction in January, February timeframe to make sure that the project is complete in time for the big event, which would be in April, I think, of
April
2024.
13th.
Yeah.
April 13th.
So
okay.
we do have a few months to, track that down. The first step to come, though, would have to be continuing to engage with the services of Freeze and Nichols to continue the design so we can continue to get that ball rolling. But obviously, we need to meet to kind of discuss the project scope, cost, et cetera. And you can bet it's on the agenda for our one-on-one meetings, in October. So.
Thank you, Brian.
If we were to do the recirculating, you talked about having to take sewer from Bridge Street over to Main Street, but we would still have to do that, right, for the restrooms?
Yeah, typically, you don't have to put splash water feature water into a sanitary sewer. You can put it into a storm sewer.
Okay.
So you really basically have
So that
two
doesn't
options.
change
So
it.
it would have to go same direction anyways.
And the restrooms have to fit in that particular area, or they make sense, I guess?
It's spatially, it just kind of makes sense to have it right there.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Did you want to hit real quick?
Yeah, just real quick. James, can you pull up the next slide? But I'll start by talking about this map that's in front of you. We want to briefly Texas Concrete and potential extension of Wagner. This is important because there's a potential cost and shifting of projects for fiscal year 23. Just can you hit the next slide, James, please? So as you know, we've been working with Texas Concrete on potentially land swapping some land, acquiring some land to extend Wagner, close Vine Street, and really just enhance the appearance and circulation of that entire area. And you probably already noticed that Texas Concrete, changed the fence on one side, on the Mockingbird side. And so we're continuing to work with them on some improvements. But next slide, please. But the biggest project is the extension of Wagner. And you can see on this map, which you have the physical printout, that what that extension looks like. And you see what's in yellow, which is the right-of-way that would be needed in order to actually extend Wagner. And then what you see in blue and purple would also be part of this land swap, because the intent is to close Vine Street so that Texas Concrete can use that land. And they give us the land in blue so that in essence their operation isn't, I guess, on both sides of Wagner at the intersection of Main. And they can update their site plan and just have better driveways, have a better entrance, parking lot, et cetera. This project has been ongoing sort of behind the scenes for, years. And so consequently, it has never formally made our CIP. And so in order to fund the extension of Wagner, we need to have a conversation about shifting projects. And so next slide, please. What we're in essence recommending is, if you look towards the bottom of your sheet for 23 letting schedule, the two bottom projects, one which is rehab and overlay of Magruder and Lingo, and then the mill and overlay for Country Club Drive, we're in essence suggesting postponing those two projects to give us some funds, along with some savings from other projects that we've identified, in order to proceed with the extension of Wagner. We would obviously do the rehab and overlay project for Magruder and Lingo in a subsequent fiscal year within our existing planning window, so either 24 or 25, as well as the Country Club Drive. As the mayor pointed out when I mentioned this to him on Tuesday during our weekly meeting, Country Club Drive is seeing less traffic because the medians on Navarro have prevented the ability to take a left onto that Country Club Drive.
And this is just the section between the Magruder, Sam Houston, and Navarro that goes behind Signs Motors. It's just that section, and it's essentially now almost a one-way.
Yeah, in essence.
So you're coming out of that neighborhood.
So less traffic there. And so anyway, so we wanted to throw that out there to try and get your opinion, on whether you're okay with shifting those two projects out in order to accommodate the extension of Wagner. The extension of Wagner would provide another connector, if you will, between Main and Navarro, once fully completed with Lingo Lane and Magruder. Currently, this stretch of Wagner is designed to be 24 feet in width, which is slightly bigger than what it is now. And so the idea would be to try and design Lingo and Magruder to match that, so that through traffic, feels like you're, going through a more legit road.
Would Texas Concrete still have the driveways onto Main Street that they have? Or would
They would look different. They would still have some driveways, but it would look, their circulation and site plan would be different.
Okay.
So realistically, they would not have that driveway closest to Wagner because it'd be too close, but they would still need two for an in and out. And part of the benefit of this change is that it actually allows them for their new out driveway to be angled in a way to where it automatically directs those 18-wheelers north on Main Street, so that when they close Main Street, they only actually close half of Main Street and not full Main Street, which is what they have to do now, because right now those trucks have to do a 90-degree turn to head towards the loop, versus if that exit was designed in a way to where it's more of like a yield type condition, already facing out, because they're never going to take a left. Then that helps only shut down half of Main Street versus all of Main Street.
And I think to me, that's one of the biggest benefits of doing this is, from a safety standpoint, we're only shutting down half of Main Street when those trucks are coming out.
And it would keep them off of the road that they're tearing up right now, theoretically. Except for partially, maybe not.
They'll still have to cross.
Yeah, they still, you
Yeah,
could see they
still
have about
cross.
2.5 acres on the other side of Wagner
Right.
Street. They'd still use that. But they would not go down Wagner. They would have their own exit. And there would be fencing improvements and some other landscaping improvements. And so the idea is just to kind of just improve that whole site.
And we might have to look at the specs of the road that when we redo that road, we might have to look at making it heavy haul.
We talked to them about that, and they knew that the reason it would have to be heavy haul was them, and they know of a good concrete place.
Okay.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Okay, can you just clarify one more time, which area they're taking up the pink and the blue, or just the pink?
No, so once we get to the point of the land swap, they would get what's in like purple, violet color. And we would get what's in blue and what's in yellow.
Okay.
We would have to pay for some of the land because once you do the math, it just doesn't, it's not an equal amount. And we would obviously make it right and pay for the amount.
They would get Vine Street and we would get the other piece.
Correct. Yeah.
Your colors were swapped from this.
Yeah, well, the violet purple piece is Vine Street, so that's what they would get. and then the blue part and the yellow part is what we would
Right.
get.
Yep.
So I can ask you again when we meet one-on-one, unless you have any questions or comments now on that proposal to shift those two projects and focus on Wagner.
I think this is one of the best solutions
Yes.
to Texas Concrete. Those tension beds are not, they don't have the capability to move them. This site it's just not feasible to even move to another location. So I think it's going to be the best solution that we can come up with.
It is. It's a good solution.
Yes.
I think so too, because right now they're willing to
Good
talk
solution,
to
make
us,
it happen.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we have a good working relationship with them, so.
Most of us do.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was all we had on the agenda for today, so thank you all.
All right, adjourned.